I was 3 weeks into my night shift training when the call came in. It was a slow Thursday, the kind where the station hums with the low buzz of computers and the occasional call from another dispatcher. My trainer, a guy named Martin who'd been doing this for 20 years, sat across from me. He was leaning back in his chair, tapping his pen against a styrofoam coffee cup, watching me run through basic call logging. It was almost midnight when the line lit up. "Go ahead," Martin said, nodding toward the headset. I took a deep breath. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing. No clicks, no shuffling, no voice. Just air. "Hello, this is 911. Do you need help?" That's when I heard it. Slow, heavy breathing. Not the kind you hear when someone's winded or panicked. This was patient. Deep inhale, long exhale, each one measured, like they were listening to me in between. "Can you tell me where you are?" I asked. My voice cracked a little, and I glanced at Martin. He gave me the universal signal for keep going. The breathing didn't change. It wasn't far away either. Usually, with phone calls, you can tell when someone's speaking across the room or when they're holding the receiver loosely. This felt close, like they were leaning into the microphone. Like if I closed my eyes, they'd be right beside me. "Sir, ma'am, if you can't speak, make a noise for yes, silence for no. Are you in danger?" Nothing but that same inhale, exhale. A strange tightness crept into my chest. My ears were tuned so hard to the sound, I could almost feel it. The little catches in their throat. The faint wetness, like their lungs were heavy. I started typing. Unresponsive caller. Audible breathing. Martin leaned forward now, squinting like he was trying to hear through my headset. I turned the volume up a little. That was a mistake. The breathing swelled in my ears, thick and almost damp. Like the air in there was heavier than it should be. My own breath caught, and without meaning to, I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing but the glow of monitors in the shadowed corners of the room. Location. Martin mouthed. I pulled up the tracing system. It spun for a second, then locked onto a number. No address. Just line, unknown. That shouldn't happen. I swallowed hard. "We can't trace you unless you tell me where you are." "Can you speak?" The breathing stopped. The silence hit harder than the sound. My whole body tensed, waiting for it to start again. Then in the faintest, smallest way, I heard it, a slow inhale. Closer this time, like the person had moved toward the microphone. Martin frowned. "Ask them again," he whispered. "Are you hurt?" I asked. They exhaled, dragging the air out like they wanted me to hear every bit of it. Something about it made my skin crawl. This wasn't someone struggling to breathe. This was someone breathing for me to hear. I muted the headset. "What do we do?" Martin was already on his computer, pulling up records. "If it's a prank, it's a sick one. But I don't like the line tag. Looks internal. Internal, like not coming from outside the system. Could be another extension in the building." I glanced around the dim dispatch center. There were only 3 of us working tonight. I unmuted the line. "Can you give me your name?" Nothing. But the breathing, it was steady again. This time, I swear I could hear the faintest rustle beneath it. Like fabric shifting. A slow creak, almost like a chair turning. Every instinct in me wanted to hang up. But I couldn't. That's not how it works. "Listen," I said, my voice low. "If you can't talk, I can send help. You just need to." The line clicked. It didn't hang up. It just changed. The breathing sounded different now. A little more in my left ear than my right. Quieter, but sharper. I'm out to Martin. "Did you hear that?" He nodded, his jaw tight. We sat there for what felt like forever. Just me, Martin, and the sound of someone's lungs filling and emptying. I could picture it. Their face inches from the mic, their eyes unblinking. Then, faintly, under the inhale, I heard it. My name. Not spoken, not whispered. More like shaped. Formed by air without words. I froze. Martin's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" I couldn't answer. I just stared at the monitor, watching the timer tick up. 1 minute. 2. 3. The breathing grew slower. Slower. Until it matched mine. Every inhale I took, they mirrored. Every exhale, they followed. I didn't even realize I'd started holding my breath until I saw Martin's hand reach over and tap the call-in button. The line went dead. The room felt smaller after that. Martin didn't say anything for a while. He just kept looking at the system, muttering under his breath. When I finally asked if he found out where it came from, he shook his head. No record, he said. But don't take calls from line 6 without me here. I frowned. Line 6. I thought I was on. I stopped. My headset was still plugged into line 3. It had been 4 nights since the breathing call. I kept telling myself it was just some freak glitch, bad routing, prank, whatever made it easier to put in a box and close the lid. But every time I plugged my headset in, I found myself glancing at the line display, making sure it wasn't 6. It was a little after 1 in the morning when the next one came in. No ring, no beeping, just the light blinking. That minute had been routed straight through. I pressed the button. 911, what's your emergency? The voice that came through was a whisper. They're above me. I sat up. Sir, what's above you? Crawling, he breathed. His voice trembled, and I could hear little clicks in the background, like drywall, settling. She's right above me. Okay, you need to tell me where you are so we can get help to you. There was a pause, then the sound of him covering the phone. Muffled breathing, then the faintest scraping noise. Slow, rhythmic, almost like knees dragging against wood. I can hear her hands, he whispered again. Fingernails. I was already typing into the CAD system, trying to ping his location. The tracker spun for longer than usual, then came back with nothing. Just coordinates unavailable. That didn't happen unless the call was coming from outside our service area, way outside. What's your address? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He gave it without hesitation. I ran it. No match. I tried just the street. Nothing. Not even in another county. Sir, can you confirm the street name? I'm not stupid, he said sharply, then went back to a whisper. I know where I live, but they won't let you find it. Something about the way he said they made my throat tighten. Are you in a house? An apartment. A house, he said. It's old. Small attic, just crawl space. I could hear him breathing now, too fast, like he was trying not to panic. She's been there for hours. Sometimes she stops, but she's moving again. Can you get out of the house? She'll hear me. I opened a side channel to Martin. I can't locate him. The address isn't real. Martin's eyes were locked on his own screen. Get as much detail as you can. I turned back to the caller. Sir, is there anyone else in the house? He hesitated. Not anymore. The scraping above him grew louder in my ear, even though it shouldn't have been possible to hear it over a phone call. It was uneven, like something pulling itself forward with one arm at a time. She's closer, he whispered. My skin prickled. Can you see the attic entrance? Yes, he breathed. It's in the hallway. She stops there sometimes. Just waits. Waits for what? He didn't answer at first. Then, so softly I almost missed it, he said, for me to fall asleep. The scraping stopped. He was silent, except for his breathing, which had gone shallow and shaky. I leaned closer to the mic. Is she still there? No. I relaxed slightly, until he added, she's moving toward you now. A chill ran through me. Sir, what do you mean? She knows you're listening. For a second, I thought about the breathing call, the way it felt like someone was right next to me. I shook it off. I need you to leave the house now. Go to a neighbor's, a public place, anywhere you can get to. He gave a low laugh, almost bitter. You can't send anyone here. This place doesn't exist for you. Sir, that's not true. Yes, it is, he cut in. It's like a pocket. You can see in, but you can't step inside. We're stuck here until she decides otherwise. His voice cracked on the last word. The scraping started again, slower now. I could hear every shift, every dragging pull of nails. She's at the hatch, he whispered. Sir, Don't call me sir, he said suddenly, almost angrily. Call me by my name. What's your name? He hesitated, then said it. But it wasn't a name I'd ever heard before. Old, strange, like it belonged to another century. She likes names, he added. Makes her remember. The sound above him shifted again, like something was turning in place. I glanced at the tray screen one last time. Still blank. Just a flat gray box where the map should be. Listen, I said quietly, stay on the line with me. Just keep talking. He didn't reply. Instead, I heard a low, drawn-out creak. The sound of wood bending underweight. She's opening it, he breathed. I heard it too. The faint metallic ring of a latch moving. I started to say his name, but he spoke over me. Don't let her hear you breathe. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the screen, my own breath coming too fast. Martin walked over, his face pale. "Nothing in the system?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not even coordinates." He was quiet for a moment. "That address he gave you?" "Yeah." Martin looked straight at me. "I had a call from there once. About 10 years ago. I felt my stomach drop. But you said it doesn't exist." "It doesn't," he said. "Not anymore." I didn't sleep much after that call. I kept thinking about the sound of nails scraping wood, the way his voice had dropped when he said she was at the hatch, and the part that bothered me most, the way he said she was moving toward me. Martin didn't bring it up the next night. Neither did I. We just went about the shift, taking routine calls, a fender bender, a noise complaint, a drunk guy locked out of his own house. The usual stuff that makes the hours blur together. But sometime after midnight, he walked over to my desk with a manila folder. "You should listen to it," he said. Inside was a CD in one of those cheap plastic sleeves. Someone had written the date on it in black marker. It was from 2 nights ago. The call. I hesitated. Why is on a disc? Don't we keep recordings digital? Martin scratched his jaw. For most calls, yeah. But when the system can't pin a source, it spits them out like this. Keeps them separate. I slid the CD into my computer. The software loaded, the waveform stretched across the screen, and then there it was, my own voice. 911, what's your emergency? His whisper followed, shaky and raw. They're above me. Hearing it again was worse than I expected. My voice sounded too calm, too clean. It sounded like it was coming from a cave. I listened straight through, my stomach tightening every time the scraping noise came in. But near the end, just before the call cut out, I heard something I didn't remember. It was faint, buried under the hiss of the line. I leaned closer to the speakers. It was a voice. Not his. Not mine. It was softer, almost like the static itself was shaping into words. And it said my name. I froze. It wasn't the first time I'd heard that. The breathing call. 4 nights ago. It had been the same, not quite a whisper, not quite speech, but something that knew my name. I hit rewind and played it again. Don't let her hear you breathe. Then the dead air. And then, right before the disconnect click, my name. The hairs on my arms stood up. I must have listened to it 10 more times, each one worse than the last. Sometimes the syllables felt sharper. Sometimes they stretched out. And each time, I got the feeling that if I listened just a little longer, I'd hear something else under it. I muted the volume and just stared at the waveform. There was something there, a little ripple in the noise where the name hit. I turned the sound back on and cranked it higher. The voice was joined by another sound now. Faint, uneven, like someone breathing, just far enough away to make you question if it's there at all. It was wrong. Not recorded wrong. Humanly wrong. The timing of the inhale didn't match an actual person's rhythm. There was a pause between each breath, like the lungs were waiting for permission. I ripped off my headset. Martin was watching me from his desk. You heard it. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He got up, walked over, and shut the CD player. Don't listen to it too much. That's how you start hearing things that aren't there. Is it just me? I asked quietly. No, he said, but it's always the same type of call. No trace. No coordinates. And sooner or later, they say your name. They? He didn't answer. That night, when I got home, I kept hearing the static in my head, like it had woven itself into the silence of my apartment. When I turned on the TV, it was there in the quiet moments between lines of dialogue. When I brushed my teeth, I swore I could hear it under the hum of the bathroom fan. By the next shift, I was trying to convince myself it was just leftover anxiety. A mental echo. Then, around 2 in the morning, I got a routine playback request from a supervisor, some minor dispute about a property damage call. I pulled up the file, hit play, and there it was again. Not the same words. Not my name, but the static. This wasn't one of the strange calls. This was a normal one, some guy reporting a busted mailbox. And yet, buried underneath his voice, there it was. I scrubbed through the file, slowing the playback down until the voices dragged like molasses. That's when I heard it. My name. Again. Only this time, it didn't sound like a whisper. It sounded like someone saying it from inside the wall. The tone was wrong. Not hostile. Not warm. Just there, like it was trying to shape of it out, seeing how it fit. My chair creaked as I leaned back, scanning the room. The vents in the ceiling looked darker than usual. The corners seemed heavier somehow, like the shadows were thicker there. I saved the audio clip and burned it to a disk, just like the first one. I told myself it was for evidence. But really, I think I just didn't want it sitting on the system where anyone could erase it. Later, I caught Martin watching me again. Not suspicious, more like concerned. "You've been listening too much," he said quietly. "I keep hearing it in other calls." He nodded like he'd been expecting that. "That's how it starts." How it starts? He looked down at my desk, at the little stack of CDs that had grown there in the past 2 days. "They find you," he said. I wanted to ask more, but the next call lit up on my board. I took it without thinking, falling into the rhythm. But when I said, 911, "What's your emergency?" there was no reply. Just breathing. Not slow like before, faster, urgent. And faintly, under the inhale, I could hear the crackle of static. I froze, my hand hovering over the mute button. The breathing stopped. And then, in that same unnatural tone I'd heard in the recordings, the voice said my name. Not through the headset. From somewhere inside the wall behind me, that I didn't sleep the night after the last call. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again. My name, stretched thin through static, curling at the edges like it had been burned. And that pause after it, like the voice was waiting for me to answer. The strangest part wasn't even the voice. It was how familiar it felt, like it had been calling me for years, and I was only now noticing. When I came back to the dispatch center, I didn't tell anyone how much the call had gotten under my skin. We all hear weird stuff sometimes, background noises, bad connections, interference, but you don't want to be the one who starts acting paranoid. Still, I needed to know where it came from. So between regular calls, I started digging. It's not hard to trace a number in our system, at least to its source line. The call logs are all digital now, but there's an older network underneath it, an almost forgotten switchboard system we technically still use as backup. When I pulled up the last call, the originating number didn't match any of the incoming lines we normally take. That was the first red flag. The second was when I traced it. The number didn't point to any outside location. It didn't belong to a landline or a cell tower. It looped back into our own building. At first, I thought I'd messed something up. I ran the trace again. Same result. The call had come from an internal extension, one that wasn't listed anywhere in our directory. An unlisted extension. That doesn't happen here. Every phone line in the center has a purpose, a station, a desk. Even the ones in storage rooms are labeled. There's no such thing as a mystery line. But there it was. The extension was tagged to a place I'd never even been, a crawl space on the far side of the building. I sat there staring at my monitor, trying to picture it. I knew that side of the building was older, part of the original structure before they renovated. The hallways there feel different. Narrower, lower ceilings, those flickering tube lights that hum like they're half dead. I'd walk past a door or two marked maintenance access, but I'd never had reason to go inside. And yet, that's where the call came from. I could have told my supervisor right then. I could have reported it as a glitch, had maintenance check it out. But I didn't. Something in me, something I can't explain, wanted to see it for myself first. It was stupid. I know that now. I waited until the late shift. Things get quiet around 2 in the morning, and the other dispatcher on duty was too busy with a domestic disturbance call to notice me leaving my station. I slipped my headset off, logged out of my console, and walked down the dim hallway toward the far end of the building. The air changes back there. It's cooler, and there's this faint smell, dust, maybe, or old wiring. The hum of electronics fades, replaced by that softer, emptier kind of silence you get in spaces people don't use anymore. The door I was looking for was painted the same dull beige as the wall. No label, no handle, just a keyhole and a small brass plate that read C, to access. It was locked, of course, but the thing about dispatch is we have a master key. Technically, it's for emergencies, but, well, curiosity felt like one. The key slid in easily. The door opened onto a narrow, low-ceilinged passage lined with exposed pipes. My shoes echoed against the concrete floor, each step sounding too loud. The walls were closer than I expected, and I had to turn sideways in a few spots to get through. After about 20 feet, the passage ended in a metal hatch. It was bolted shut, but the bolts were loose, like someone had been in there recently. I unlatched them one by one, the metal groaning softly. When I pulled the hatch open, stale air spilled out. Inside was the crawl space. It was smaller than I thought, a cramped rectangle maybe 6 feet wide, 8 feet long, ceiling just low enough that I had a hunch. The walls were unfinished, rough concrete on 2 sides, warped wood on the others. And there, against the far wall, was a phone. One of the old models, beige plastic, rotary dial. It sat on a low shelf like it had been waiting. The cord trailed into the wall. I froze. My brain was trying to piece together why this would even be here. This building hadn't used rotary phones in decades. Even the backups are push button. I took a step closer. The phone wasn't dusty. It looked new, and then it rang. I can't describe that sound without shivering. It wasn't the normal sharp ring you get from a phone. It was duller, like it had been recorded and played back through bad speakers. But it was loud in that small space, way too loud. I didn't want to touch it. God, I didn't want to, but my hand lifted anyway, like something in me was already answering. The receiver was heavier than it should have been. I put it to my ear. Static. No voice, no breathing. Just that thick, rolling static like an ocean inside the line. I almost hung up. And then, my name, clearer than before, but still wrapped in the static. I felt my whole body lock up. I couldn't even swallow. I whispered, "Who is this?" There was a pause. Then the faintest, wet sound, like someone smiling with their lips too close to the mouthpiece. "You found me." It was my own voice. I hung up so fast I dropped the receiver. It swung on the cord, hitting the wall with a hollow thud. I backed toward the hatch, but something made me glance at the phone again. The rotary dial was turning on its own. Click, click, click. I didn't wait to see what number it was dialing. I ran back through the passage, heart slamming, not caring how much noise I made. When I reached the main hall, it felt like stepping into another world. Light, air, people's voices in the distance. I went straight to my console and pulled up the internal line list again. That extension, it was gone, like it had never existed. No record of the call, no record of the trace. I didn't tell anyone. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. How do you explain something like that without sounding insane? But I've been hearing things since then. Not on the phone, at least not always. Sometimes when the building is quiet, I hear the faint buzz of static coming from the walls. Not constant, just a few seconds at a time like the sound is moving. And sometimes, I swear I hear my name in it. It's been 3 weeks since I went into that crawl space. I haven't gone back. I don't even walk past that into the building anymore. But 2 nights ago, the phone at my station rang. It was late, just after 3 in the morning. I didn't recognize the number. I answered. Static. And then, "Are you coming back?" It started with that silence you only notice when the world suddenly goes dark. No hum of the vending machine. No click of the ceiling fan. Just nothing. The power had been flickering on and off all evening, storms moving across the county, but by the time my shift settled into that late-night dead zone, everything went out completely. The dispatcher floor was lit only by the dull glow from the backup monitors and the faint green light of the radio panels. Even the street lamps outside had gone black, the parking lot just a flat sheet of night beyond the windows. We'd switched to emergency protocol, portable lamps set up, radios running on generator, but out here in the rural counties, power could take hours to restore. Sometimes, in the quieter hours, that wasn't so bad. Call slow down. You could breathe. But that night, even the air felt wrong. It was around 12:17 a.m. when the phone rang. Not the usual steady ring. This one was sharp, jittery, like the sound was anxious to get out. 911. What's your emergency? For a second, nothing. Then I heard him. Oh, thank God. Someone's there. His voice cracked, loud enough I had to pull the headset back. Please, please, you have to send someone right now. Sir, I need you to take a breath and tell me your location. I can't. His breathing was rapid, went in the throat like he'd been running. County Line Road, somewhere past the mile 6 marker. I think my headlights died. I tapped the map system, but with the outage, the display was barely crawling. You're on County Line Road. Is it near the old irrigation field? Yes. Yes, that's it. Oh, God. There was a sound behind him, faint but sharp, like dry leaves brushing together. He must have turned, because his voice dropped into a whisper. They're moving again. Who's moving? He didn't answer right away, just breathing in out too fast until finally the shadows. I glanced at the backup clock on the wall. Sir, I need you to clarify. They're not people, he said, quick, panicked. Not animals either. Just shapes. Darker than the dark. They're coming closer every time I blink. I almost asked if he'd been drinking, but his voice didn't have that loose, sloppy tone. This was tight, choking fear. The system finally spit out coordinates, but it was patchy, a red dot floating somewhere in a 2-mile stretch. Out there, that might as well be the middle of nowhere. Do you have any light? I asked. No. That's what started it. When my headlights went out, they started moving. I thought maybe it was just the dark playing tricks, but they're real. I can hear them scraping on the road. Sir, I'm sending deputies your way. I flagged the nearest unit, but the outage had half the radios cutting in and out. Static hissed back at me. Can you get back in your vehicle? I'm in it now, he whispered. I locked the doors. But I can't. I can't keep my eyes open much longer. That set something cold in my chest. Why not? Because they only move when I blink. A sharp pop came over the line like interference, but then I realized it was the faint rapping of something against glass. Slow. Measured. Are they touching your car? He didn't answer. His breath hitched, caught. Sir. The line went dead. I stared at the phone display, waiting for the callback light to flash. It didn't. Backup finally got through on the radio, and I relayed the details. Deputy Carver was about 15 minutes out, in the dark, on back roads. That's as fast as you can get. I kept watching the console for any incoming call from that number. Nothing. 15 minutes feels like hours when all you can do is wait. I kept hearing his voice in my head. They only move when I blink. The storm outside had rolled on, but the power was still out. Through the window, the night was just solid. The kind of black you could lean into and never hit bottom. The radio cracked again, Carver's voice tight. I'm at mile 6 now. No vehicle in sight. I checked the coordinates. He was within a mile radius. Could have rolled off into a ditch. Negative. I've swept the ditches. Nothing but open road. Static swallowed the next words, but I caught. Not alone out here. Repeat, Carver. The line hissed, then came back. Thought I saw movement near the tree line, but it cut out again. I tried to reach him twice more before he came back on. Voice lower now. There's a light up ahead. Dim. Flickering. Looks like it's coming from inside the trees. Carver, you're alone. Wait for backup before. Can't wait. Might be him. The next 30 seconds were only the sound of his tires crunching over gravel, then the engine idling. Dispatch, he whispered. There's no vehicle here. Just a lantern. Old metal. Hanging from a branch. I didn't even get a chance to respond before his breath caught on the line. The shadows. I see what he meant now. I sat up straight. Carver, what do you see? They're not shadows exactly. More like when heat rises off asphalt. That shimmer. But black. It's bending the trees around it. Jesus. His voice broke sharp. They're between me and the cruiser. I told him to keep talking, keep describing what he saw, but all I heard was him backing away, muttering under his breath. Then, the sound of the radio hitting the ground. The channel went dead. I called his unit again. Nothing. The cruiser's GPS still showed stationary at the mile marker. Another deputy, Morales, was rerouted to assist. It was 27 minutes before she came back on the line. Carver's cruiser is here. Door wide open. No sign of him. What about the lantern? I asked before I could stop myself. A pause. What lantern? I didn't answer. Morales found tire marks leading off into the trees, but not from the cruiser. She followed them about 30 feet until they simply stopped. No more impressions. No footprints. Just a patch of dirt that looked like it had been smoothed over by something dragging. They called in search and rescue. They combed those woods for hours. By dawn, they'd found nothing. No man. No lantern. No sign there'd ever been another vehicle. The number the man had called from? Disconnected. Not just inactive. Never registered to any carrier in the first place. They tried to tell me it was probably interference. Could have been someone using a deactivated phone to dial 911. You can still do that. And maybe Carver got turned around, maybe he wandered off, and, well, that part they didn't finish saying. But here's the thing. When the sun came up and the power finally came back, I went through the call logs. His call timestamp was 12:17 a.m. At 12:29 a.m., while Carver was still en route, there was another incoming call from that same number. No one answered it. It never rang through. Just sat in the system log. Duration, midnight. Location, unknown. That night, when the others had gone, I stayed late, replaying the recording from the first call. I don't know why. Maybe to hear if there was anything I'd missed. It was the same panic, the same words. But when I turned the volume all the way up between his gasps and the scraping sounds on the glass, I could hear something else. A voice. Low. Right against the mic. It wasn't speaking English. It wasn't speaking anything I knew. It just sounded wrong. Like a mouth trying to form shapes it wasn't meant to make. And under it, faint but steady, there was a second sound. The click of someone's eyes opening that I didn't go home after the first call. Even after it went quiet, after the man's screaming cut off mid-sentence. Something about his voice wouldn't let me leave. It wasn't just fear, it was the kind that soaked deep. A terror that feels practiced, like he'd been living with it for a long time, and it had finally caught up to him. I kept the phone next to me on the console, glancing at it every few seconds as the radio hissed faintly in the dark. I didn't even know if he'd call again. And then, he did. It was almost exactly an hour later. The line crackled once, and then his voice came back, softer now, but frantic. He whispered, "They're still out there." I didn't even get a hello in before he kept going. I'm inside now. The gas station. The one near the bend on County Line. That threw me. There's no gas station there. I told him. You mean the old corner store? The one they boarded up? No, he said. Lights are on. That sent a chill through me. Not because of what he said, but because of the way he said it. There was no conviction in his voice. Like he didn't even believe himself. I knew that stretch. I'd driven it dozens of times when I first moved out here. There used to be a Sinclair station out there, but it shut down years ago. No power, no pumps, nothing but a faded sign still clinging to its frame. Locals said the guy who owned it just locked the doors one night and never came back. "Sir, are you sure you're at the gas station?" He paused, then whispered, "I can see the counter. I'm behind it. Hiding." I asked him to describe it. Shelves are stocked. Coffee's still hot. There's a TV in the corner playing some old show. Black and white. I think it's a comedy. I can't hear it. The sound's off. But it's wrong. I felt the back of my neck prick. Wrong how? He didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing, shallow, shaky. Then, they keep looking at me. Who? The people in the show. They're all smiling, but their eyes, they're looking right at me. I gripped the phone tighter. I tried to reason with him, try to keep him grounded. Told him maybe he was disoriented. Maybe he ducked into an old building and the emergency lights made it look like. "They're here," he interrupted, his voice almost breaking. "Not inside. Not yet. But I can see them through the glass." I didn't want to ask, but I did. "What do they look like?" He took too long to answer. "They're not shaped right. Not like people. They are taller, bending at the wrong spots." Another pause. "They don't move like they have bones." My skin crawled. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You need to stay where you are. I'll send someone." That was a lie. There was no someone. At this hour, I was the only one on shift. And even if there were deputies out, County Line was a dead zone. No cell, no radio. Still, I had to get to him. I told him to stay on the line. I grabbed my keys, left the station, and headed for the bend. The night was thick and heavy, the kind where the headlights only seemed to light the dust in the air, not the road ahead. Halfway there, he started whispering again. "They're closer. I think they know I'm talking to you." "What makes you think that?" "Their heads are tilting, all the same way, like they're listening." I pressed harder on the gas. The thing is, I didn't believe him. Not fully, but I believe his fear. And sometimes, that's enough to make you believe the rest. When I got to the bend, I slowed down. There should have been nothing but weeds and an empty lot. But I saw it. The gas station, lit up like it was 1997. Fluorescent lights buzzing. The big green Sinclair dinosaur glowing faintly above the door. Even the pumps looked new. And there was a man's silhouette behind the counter. "Sir," I said into the phone, "I see you. I'm pulling in." He didn't answer. I parked right in front, left the engine running. I could see him crouched behind the counter now, peeking over the edge. He looked terrified. I grabbed my flashlight, and opened the door. The lights went out. Everything. The building, the pumps, even my own headlights. Just black. The phone in my hand went dead too. No static, no dial tone, just nothing. I stood there for what felt like forever, staring at the dark outline of the station. My eyes adjusted, just enough to see movement inside. Not him. Something else. Something tall. I froze. Then, slowly, the lights flickered back on. The man was gone. The shelves were empty. The counter was bare. Dust coated every surface. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I backed away toward my truck, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Before I got in, I glanced once more at the building. The TV in the corner was on now. Static. And for a split second, I swore I saw something in it. Just the outline of someone standing in the snow, smiling. That I've worked a night shift at dispatch long enough to know when people are overreacting. I've heard the panic in voices when a deer crosses the road or when a branch slaps a windshield. Most of the time, it's not an emergency. It's just the way night twists things inside your head. But the calls about mile marker 6 were different. The first one came in just after midnight. A man's voice low, shaking. He said he was heading home from work, out past the county line, when he saw something. They're just standing there, he told me. Middle of the road. Not moving. At first, I thought he meant people. I asked if he could describe them, clothes, height, build. But he said no. Not people. Not exactly. They're shadows, he said. Standing straight up, like they're waiting for something. I asked if there was a street light nearby. A porch light. A car behind him. Anything that could cast a shadow. There's nothing, he said. No light at all. But they're still there. Then he whispered something I didn't expect. They turned when I stopped. Like they could hear me. The line went dead after that. I stared at the console for a few seconds, telling myself it was just a bad connection. Maybe his battery died. Maybe he hung up because he realized how strange he sounded. It happens. But 15 minutes later, another call came in. Different driver. Different car. Same road. Same description. They're not moving, she said. Just standing there in the middle. I almost hit them. I told her to stay on the line, keep her doors locked, and drive slowly around them if she could. I asked her if they looked solid, if they had weight to them. No, she said, almost crying now. They're flat, like a shadow, but they're standing up. I tried to get more details. We're exactly on the road. How many? But she just kept repeating one thing. They know I can see them. She didn't scream, didn't cry out. She just went quiet. I heard her breathing get faster. Then a muffled thud. Then nothing. No screaming tires. No crash. Just the absence of her voice. By the time our patrol got there, her car was pulled to the shoulder, still idling. Driver's door wide open. Keys in the ignition. Her purse on the passenger seat. She was gone. No footprints on the road. No sign she'd walked off into the woods. Just gone. I should have logged those calls as official incidents. But I didn't. I told myself I was waiting for more information, but if I'm honest, I didn't want this on paper. Not yet. At 1:14 a.m., another call came in. Male, mid-30s, driving a pickup. His voice was steady, too steady, like he was forcing it. Listen, he said, I don't want to sound crazy, but there's something wrong out here. He gave his location. I didn't even need to look it up. Mile marker 6. They're on the road again, he said. Same spot. 3 of them. I asked him to describe what he was seeing. They're shadows, he said, but wrong. Like they're darker than the dark around them. That sentence stuck with me. Darker than the dark around them. I could hear his blinker ticking faintly through the phone. Then he said, one of them just moved. I asked if it was coming toward him. No, it stepped to the side, like it's making room. Making room for what? I didn't ask, because right then, something else happened. They're gone, he said, just like that. 1 second they were there, next second gone. But then he said something that made my stomach turn. They're behind me now. I heard his truck accelerate hard. Tires skidding on gravel. Him muttering, no, 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 no. The call ended. We sent units. The truck was found 15 minutes later, parked sideways in the middle of the road. Lights on. Driver's door closed. No sign of the man. The officers who responded told me something I didn't want to believe. They said that when they pulled up, there were shapes in the road, like patches of shadow, standing up, even though there were no headlights, no moonlight, nothing to make them. And when the cruiser got closer, They just slid away. I kept replaying those calls in my head. The way they all described the same thing. The way the voices would change, drop lower, like they didn't want whatever was out there to hear them. Around 2:30 a.m., I decided I couldn't just sit there anymore. I told the relief operator I was going to check something. I didn't tell her what. The drive out, there was suffocating. That stretch of road has no lights. No houses. The woods press in on both sides, and the asphalt feels like it just hangs there in a void. When I passed mile marker 5, my hand started to sweat. I kept telling myself I wouldn't see anything, that this was just the night shift messing with my head. Then my headlights swept across the white post for mile marker 6. At first, there was nothing, just the cracked blacktop, the faded paint lines, the curtain of trees. Then shapes, 3 of them, in the middle of the road. They didn't blur like fog. They didn't shimmer like heat. They were sharp, defined, but flat like someone had cut them out of the world. They didn't reach toward me, didn't sway. They just stood there, as if they'd been waiting. My first instinct was to swing the wheel, turn around. But I didn't. I slowed down. The closer I got, the more wrong they looked. No depth, no texture, just solid black, black that didn't match the shadows my headlights were casting on the road. And then they moved. Not all at once. Just one. A slow, careful step to the side. Making room. I couldn't breathe. Every instinct told me to get out of there. But my foot felt glued to the brake. I swear, and I know how this sounds, I could feel them looking at me. No eyes. No faces. But the weight of their attention pressed down hard. Then they vanished. Not like they faded. Not like they walked away. They were just gone. And in the rearview mirror, they were closer. I didn't wait to see if they'd move again. I hit the gas, so hard my tires screamed. Didn't stop until I saw the faint glow of the next town. When I pulled over, my hand was shaking so bad I could barely shift in a park. I told myself I'd imagined it, that I'd been primed by the calls, the stories, the dark. But when I got back to the station, there was a voicemail waiting. Time-stamped less than 2 minutes after I'd left mile marker 6. It was just breathing, slow, steady, and underneath it a faint, wet sound, like footsteps on damp pavement. Whoever, whatever, made that call never said a word. I logged the incident as unsubstantiated. What else could I do? But I can't shake the feeling I didn't leave them behind, that they followed. And sometimes, when I'm driving home after a shift, I catch something in my peripheral vision. A stretch of black, darker than the night around it. Standing still, waiting to... I thought the worst of it was over. That's the thing about relief. It's like letting your guard down in a war zone. You breathe out too early, and that's when the bullet finds you. The lights came back on at 4:13 a.m. Street lamps hummed awake. The diner across from the station glowed, soft yellow, through the rain. Even the soda machine in the break room made that familiar click-and whir like it was picking up right where it left off. For a minute, the world seemed normal again. But it wasn't. Dispatch is never normal. You don't just flip the power back and pretend nothing happened. When the grid goes out, your lines get flooded. Alarms tripped by the outage. Old people panicking because their oxygen concentrators stopped. Drunk drivers forgetting traffic lights exist. We expected a storm of calls. But the board stayed quiet. Dead quiet. At 4:17, I was just staring at the call log, waiting for the first 911 to roll in. My partner, Harris, sat across from me, drumming his fingers on a coffee cup. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at anything, really. "You notice how still it is?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, because I had noticed, and I've been trying not to. It wasn't the kind of stillness that happens when things calm down. It was heavy, like the sound was gone from the air itself. No cars, no dogs barking, no wind through the trees outside the bay doors. The rain had even stopped mid-drizzle. The storm hadn't passed. It had just stopped. The first call came at 4:19. Line 2. No caller ID, just private. 911. "What's your emergency?" I said. At first, nothing. Just static like a faint SHHHHHH in my ear. Then, "You can't turn the back on." The voice was low, rough, like someone speaking through a burned throat. "Sir, or ma'am, who is this?" I asked. "You can't turn it back on," it said again. "It's not real. None of it." I was about to push for a location when the line cut dead. No click, no tone, just gone. I wrote it down, time-stamped it, logged unidentified caller. Harris didn't say a word, but I caught him watching me in the reflection of his monitor. At 4:24, another call came in. Same private label. This time a woman. "They're still here," she said. "Who's still here?" "The shadows." I felt something cold move through me. "You're saying there are people outside?" "They're not people. They're just standing. Still. No headlights. No moonlight. But the shadows are still there." She was crying now, trying to whisper like she was afraid to be overheard. "They don't move," she said. "They just look at the road." "Ma'am, where are you?" "Mile marker 6. My throat went dry. I didn't tell her we'd already had calls about mile marker 6 during the blackout, or that the deputies who checked it came back pale and tight-lipped, saying there was nothing there and refusing to write a report. Before I could say anything else, the call cut out. The lights hummed overhead, steady. The computers blinked green, and still, no record of either call was showing on the system. At 4:32, the phone rang again. Harris answered this one. 911, what's your emergency? I couldn't hear the other side, but I saw Harris's face tighten, his fingers pressing into the desk. Then he went white. How is this possible? He whispered into the phone. I mouthed, what? He looked at me, swallowed, and said into the headset, but you're dead. He hung up, just like that. Who was it? I asked. His voice cracked. Calder. The name hit me like a slap. Calder was a dispatcher here before me. He'd been training on the night shift when a drunk driver plowed through a gas station on Route 17. Tank exploded. He didn't make it out. That was 6 years ago. I didn't ask if Harris was sure. You can't mistake someone's voice when you've worked a console next to them for 3 years. By 4:40, the board was still clean. No log calls, but the phones kept ringing. Every one of them either about shadows on the road or a voice that should have been long gone. One woman said she recognized the voice of her own husband, who died of a heart attack in their kitchen last winter. He told her not to follow the lights. Another man claimed his brother was calling from the army, except his brother had been killed in Afghanistan in 2009. Every call ended the same way. No disconnect tone, no record, nothing. By 5 a.m., Harris refused to answer the phones. He just sat there, staring at the far wall, muttering not again under his breath. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to. When dawn started to bleed into the parking lot, I thought maybe things would snap back to reality. But even in daylight, the streets felt wrong. We had 0 official calls for the entire outage. No medical emergencies. No fender benders. No elderly people whose oxygen machines shut off. Statistically, that was impossible. I filed my log sheets anyway, every private call, every word I could remember. Then I want to check the outage record. According to the utility company's database, there had been no outage at all. The grid report was clean. And then I saw the note at the bottom of the report. It was short, written in all caps. Stop answering. It didn't have a signature. That night, I couldn't sleep. The quiet in my apartment wasn't like normal quiet. It was the same heaviness from the station. Like the air was thick. Like the walls were listening. Around 2:13 a.m., my cell phone buzzed. Private number. I shouldn't have answered. But I did. Don't come back, the voice said. It wasn't rough or ghostly this time. It was calm, even, and it was mine. My own voice, speaking from the other end. The call ended before I could breathe. I didn't go in the next shift, or the next, but I drove past the station 2 nights later. The windows were dark. No cars in the lot. And in the middle of the road, just past mile marker 6, I saw them. The shadows, standing still. And even though my headlights were off, they didn't fade. They just turned, all at once, to look at me that I've been a 911 dispatcher for 8 years, and I thought I'd heard every kind of voice panic can make. The sharp, high-pitched squeal of someone seeing blood for the first time. The hoarse whisper of a kid hiding in a closet. The wet, choking sob of someone who knows they're going to die before help arrives. But I've never heard my own voice call for help. That night started like any other shift. 3rd one in a row. Coffee lukewarm. My headset a little too tight. The hum of the fluorescent lights pressing against the inside of my skull. It was around 2:15 a.m., dead hour for calls. The kind where you stare at the digital clock and feel every second drag like it's caught in molasses. I remember yawning into my sleeve and thinking about whether to grab a snack from the vending machine. Then the call came in. No ringing, just the click of an open line in my ear, like the caller had been there for a second before I noticed. 911, what's your emergency? I said, routine sliding into my voice without thought. There was a pause. Then, I'm at the corner of Bell and Marrow. I froze. The voice was mine. Not just similar, not just close. It was me. My exact tone, the little rasp in the middle of sentences, the weight I carry in my words when I'm tired. I actually looked over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone playing a recording. But the other dispatchers were buried in their own calls or scrolling on their phones. Nobody was looking at me. Who is this? I asked. There was another pause. I could hear shallow breathing. Then my voice, my exact voice, said, I'm in trouble. Every part of me wanted to slam the line shut. Instead, I typed the location into the system. Bell and Marrow was a quiet intersection. A couple of dark storefronts, a closed diner, and an old payphone that's been dead for years. What's your name? I asked, even though I already knew what the answer would be. The other me said, you know my name? I swallowed. If you need help, you have to tell me what happened. Yeah, I spoke again, but this time softer, like someone leaning in. They're going to think you're me. I felt something cold slide into my chest, like ice water running through my veins. Who's going to think that? But there was no answer. Just breathing. Slow. Steady. Exactly the way I breathe when I'm trying to keep control. Are you hurt? I tried again. Not yet, he said. But you will be. The line clicked dead. I sat there with my headset still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Then I realized my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't type. I pulled up the call log. Duration, 0:32 seconds. Caller ID, unknown. No number. That's impossible. Every call, even blocked ones, leaves some trace in the system. But the space where the number should have been was just blank. I flagged the supervisor, but he brushed it off as a prank. Said maybe someone was running voice mimic software. But here's the thing. There's no way to fake the little imperfections. No way to get the way my tongue sticks slightly when I hit T sounds, or the way my breath catches when I'm on the edge of losing my patience. It wasn't a fake. It was me. I couldn't let go. I told the next shift I was heading out for coffee and drove to Bell and Marrow. The streets were empty. The air was heavy with that damp smell you get right before rain. I parked under the dead traffic light and sat there, staring at the payphone. The glass on the booth was smeared with grime, the receiver hanging limp by the cord. No one in sight. But as I stepped closer, I heard it, faint, muffled, like a whisper pressed through a wall. Help me. I spun, but the street was empty. No cars, no people, just the sound of my own breathing, too loud in my ears. I pressed my hand to the payphone glass. Cold. And then, somewhere deep inside the booth, the receiver swung on its cord. No wind, no movement, just that slow, deliberate sway. I backed up fast, heart hammering. When I got back to the station, I didn't tell anyone where I'd been. But the call wasn't done with me. Around 4 a.m., my line lit up again. 911, what's your emergency? This time, I didn't even get the whole greeting out before I spoke. You shouldn't have come here. My mouth went dry. What do you want? To trade. That word, trade, it landed in me like a stone sinking in deep water. I don't understand. You will. And then I heard something in the background. A faint static hum, like an old tape deck running with nothing recorded on it. Over it, voices. Dozens. Whispers layered on whispers, speaking too fast to catch, but one cut through. It was my mother's voice, and she's been dead for 5 years. She said, don't let him in. My skin prickled so hard it hurt. Who are you? I asked, my voice cracking. I told you, the other me said. I'm the real one. And then, look behind you. I spun in my chair. The dispatch floor was exactly as it had been. Same flicker in the overhead lights. Same smell of burnt coffee. Same half-asleep coworkers. But down the far aisle, between two empty desks, a man was standing. I couldn't see his face. The lights didn't seem to touch him right. But he had my build, my stance, my hands hanging loose at my sides the way mine do when I'm thinking. And then he smiled. I didn't see it. I felt it, like someone curling their fingers inside my skin. When I turned back to the console, the line was dead. No call logged. No recording. Like it never happened. but I could still hear his voice. And every time I do, it sounds a little less like mine that I didn't touch my coffee after that first call. It sat there, cooling beside my hand, the steam curling up in thin, lazy strands until it stopped completely. Dispatch at night is quiet, most of the time. Not silent, but quiet in the way an empty parking lot is, where you can hear the buzz of the lights, the click of a vent starting up, the occasional scratch of your own chair against the floor. You get used to it. But after that call, it felt like the quiet had a weight to it, like it was leaning on me. I kept replaying the voice in my head. My voice. The same cadence. The same subtle rasp when the words got low. I never heard a recording of myself that sounded that close. Even recordings never sound exactly like what you hear in your own head. This was different. This was like standing in a bathroom mirror and hearing your reflection talk first. He'd said he was the real one, and I'd laughed it off, or tried to, but the way he said it, slow, almost pitying, made it hard to let go. My shift went on. Calls came in. A minor fender bender. An old woman reporting a noise in her backyard. Nothing unusual. Nothing like that. Around 2 a.m., I poured myself another cup of coffee. The first mug was still sitting there, untouched, the ring of brown clinging to the inside like it didn't want to let go. I pushed it to the side and tried not to look at it. That's when the line lit up. No caller ID. Just line 3, glowing in pale green. I hesitated, and that's not normal for me. You don't hesitate in dispatch. You answer, you assess, you send help. But my hand hung over the button for a second too long before I pressed it. 911, what's your... You're still in my seat. I froze. It was the same voice again. My voice. I told you not to touch my coffee, it said. I looked down. The mug was right there, the fresh one, warm under my hand. But the old one, the cold, untouched cup from earlier, it was sitting exactly where I'd left it. I'm not touching it, I said before I could stop myself. The line crackled. It wasn't the kind of static you get from a bad connection. It was soft, almost wet, like someone pressing their lips too close to the receiver and breathing into it. You're touching everything, the voice said. You're leaning on my desk. You've got your left elbow next to the notepad, like you always do. You keep glancing at the clock, thinking the shift is almost over, but it's not. Not for you. I straightened, my eyes darting to the clock. 2:07. He was right. My elbow had been exactly where he said. I hadn't even realized it. I tried to keep my voice level. Who is this? You know who I am. I looked around the dispatch room. It's not big. 3 desks in a U-shape, walls lined with file cabinets and white boards. Only one desk was lit, mine. The others were empty, clean, chairs pushed in. I was alone. But I swear, in that moment, it felt like the room was bigger. Like the shadows between the filing cabinets were deeper than they'd been a second ago. I'm not doing this with you, I said, and reached to hang up. You can't hang up, the voice said. And I stopped. Not because I believed him, but because he sounded so certain. Like he knew exactly what I was about to do before I did it. Why are you calling me? I asked. I'm not calling you, he said. You're calling me. Every second you sit there, you're calling me. You're my place. Using my hands. Breathing my air. Something in my chest tightened. I told myself it was just some elaborate prank. Someone with a voice changer. Maybe even someone in the building with a second line. But then I realized the things he was describing weren't just guesses. They were exact. He knew about the coffee mug. He knew where my elbow was. And now, you're chewing your lip, he said softly. I stopped. My teeth were pressing into the corner of my mouth. I hadn't realized I was doing it until he said it. Get out of my seat, he whispered. I pushed back in my chair. My eyes scanned the other desks again, the dark corners of the room, the hallway beyond the glass door. Nothing. Just empty space. Okay, I said, my voice low. You want the seat? Come get it. There was a pause on the line. Then the sound of breathing, slow and measured. I thought maybe he'd hung up. But then, I already have it, he said. And the line went dead. I sat there for a long time after that, phone still in my hand, waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. But the air in the room had changed. I could hear the hum of the monitors, the tick of the clock, the faint slosh of coffee in my cup when my hand trembled. All the little sounds that had always been background noise were now sharp. Intentional. I turned back to my screen, tried to lose myself in work. but my eyes kept flicking to the other two desks. One of them was the backup desk, same setup as mine, same monitors, same phone, just not used often. The other belonged to the shift supervisor. Bigger monitor, separate radio controls, a little plant in the corner. Both empty. But when I glanced at the backup desk again, something caught my eye. The chair was pulled out. I'd seen it pushed in earlier. I was sure of it. And now it sat at a slight angle, just enough that someone could be sitting there, facing me. I told myself I just hadn't noticed before, that maybe one of the day's shift workers had left it like that. But when I looked away, I swear I heard the faintest sound, like the squeak of the chair shifting under weight. The rest of the shift dragged. No more strange calls. No more static breaths in my ear. But the backup desk stayed like that, pulled out, waiting. When my relief finally came in, I didn't mention any of it. What would I even say? That my own voice had called me? That it knew what I was doing, down to the smallest detail? No. I just grabbed my jacket, avoided looking at the other desk, and left. I didn't sleep well the next day. I kept thinking about the way he'd said, I already have it. What did that mean? By the time I came in for my next shift, I'd convinced myself it was over. Maybe I'd been tired. Maybe someone really was screwing with me. And now they'd had their fun. The room looked the same. The backup desk was pushed in. No coffee on my desk this time. I decided not to make any. And for the first few hours, it was fine. Just another night. Then, around 1:40 a.m., I reached for my water bottle and froze. There was a coffee mug on my desk. Not mine. Not the one I'd left at home. It was the same chipped white mug from the night before. The one I'd pushed aside. Full. Steam curling up in lazy spirals. I didn't touch it. I didn't even want to look at it. The line lit up. Line 3. I stared at it, my hand hovering over the button. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. I answered. And this time, I didn't speak first. You're learning, my voice said. It almost sounded amused. You didn't touch the coffee. That's good. That's respectful. I forced myself to breathe evenly. What do you want from me? To remind you, he said. This isn't yours. What isn't? There was a pause. Then I heard it, the faint scrape of a chair leg against the floor. Not through the phone, from inside the room. I turned, slowly. The backup desk chair was pulled out again, just like before. Only this time, it was still moving. You're not even looking in the right place, the voice whispered. My eyes flicked to the phone in my hand, then to the desk. The mug of coffee sat there, steam still curling upward, even though I hadn't touched it. The voice on the line let out a slow breath. I can see you, it said. And then, almost gently, from the other desk, the line went dead that I didn't sleep much the night before. Not because of nightmares, though I've been having those lately. It was more the feeling of being watched, even in my own apartment, even with the curtains drawn. I catch myself glancing at the corner of the room, expecting to see something I couldn't explain. When I got to the dispatch center that night, the air felt thicker than usual. Not humid, just heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The others had already left. I was the only one scheduled for the graveyard shift. The hum of the overhead fluorescents and the low chatter from the police radio were my only company. I sat at my desk. My real desk. The one against the north wall. The one with the small dent in the metal from when I dropped the headset 2 years ago. My coffee mug sat to my right, the chipped handle facing me. The smell of stale grounds clung to the rim. It was a routine start. Boot up the system. Log in. Check the previous shift's call log. Try not to think about the other night. The voice. The way it described exactly what I was looking at. The way it mentioned my coffee mug without hesitation. I tried to explain it away. Maybe someone had been in the room, hidden, whispering through some patched-in channel. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I told myself tonight would be boring. But that hope didn't last long. Around 1:40 a.m., one of the security screens in the corner started glitching. The feed stuttered, static tearing across it in jagged lines. I figured it was just a bad connection to one of the building's cameras. But when the image stabilized, my throat went dry. It was the camera for this room, the dispatch floor, and it showed me. Not in the seat I was in, that was still empty in the feed, but sitting at the desk across from me. The overflow desk, the one we only use when trainees come in. The me on the screen was hunched slightly forward, headset on, typing. I glanced at the real, overflow desk in the room. It was empty. The figure on the monitor stopped typing. Slowly, like it knew I was watching, it turned its head toward the camera. I swear, it was me. Same shirt, same unshaven face, same tired eyes. I froze. My first thought was that this had to be a glitch, maybe an old feed from when I'd been training someone months ago. But I'd never sat at that desk for more than a minute. And the timestamp in the corner of the screen showed the live feed, 1:42 a.m. The me on the screen just sat there, staring. I felt a creeping itch at the back of my neck, like the air behind me was pressing in. I spun my chair halfway around to glance at the overflow desk in person. Still empty. But my coffee mug was gone. I whipped my head back to my own desk. Empty spot where it had been a second ago. The screen showed the other me picking it up, slowly raising it to his lips. Drinking. I gripped the edge of my desk, so hard my knuckles ached. My breathing got shallow. I thought about calling someone, security, a supervisor, anyone. But how the hell do you explain that without sounding insane? Instead, I decided to test it. I raised my right hand in front of my face. On the monitor, the other me raised his left. Not mirrored, opposite. It wasn't copying me. It was countering me. I lowered my hand. It lowered the opposite. The thought slid into my head before I could stop it. Which one of us is real? That's when the phone rang. Not the one on my desk. The one on the overflow desk. It was a short, sharp ring that sliced through the quiet. I flinched, eyes darting between the actual desk and the monitor. On the feed, the other me reached for the receiver. I heard nothing from my side of the room. No sound of it being picked up. But then, a voice crackled over my headset. "I'm watching your shift too." It wasn't my voice. Not exactly, but it was close enough that my skin tightened. I tore the headset off and shoved it onto the desk. The sound still came through. Muffled, but there. I looked at the monitor again. The other me was smiling now. Not wide, just enough to let me know he could. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back and slammed into the wall. My instinct was to leave, to put distance between me and whatever was happening. But I couldn't look away from the screen. The other me set the coffee mug down and began typing again. His fingers moved faster this time, almost blurring. I glanced at my own keyboard, untouched, but I could swear I heard faint keystrokes coming from somewhere in the room. A notification popped up on my computer. An incoming message. Sender. No ID. Subject. Split shift. Body. Sit back down. I didn't. The message vanished before I could take a screenshot. When I looked back at the feed, the other me was gone. The overflow desk sat empty again. I scanned the room. No movement. No sound except for the steady hum of the air system. My mug was back on my desk, exactly where it had been before. The handle chipped, the same dried coffee rim. I sat down slowly, my pulse still rattling in my ears. I told myself I'd imagined it. That maybe my brain, running on too little sleep and too much caffeine, had played a trick on me. I almost convinced myself, until 3:13 a.m. That's when the footage rewound itself. The live feed hiccuped, then skipped back 30 minutes. I watched myself, the real me, sitting at my desk, staring at the monitor, doing nothing. Then, the other me walked in a frame. From behind my seat. I never turned, never reacted, just sat there, oblivious. The other me stepped around, crossed the room, and sat at the overflow desk. Then he leaned toward the camera, as if whispering something I couldn't hear. I stared at the screen until the loop ended. When the feed caught back up to real time, both desks were empty. Except, I wasn't in my own seat anymore. Not on the screen. The camera showed me, or something wearing me, sitting at the overflow desk. Hands folded, waiting. I glanced to my left. The real overflow desk was still empty. But I knew, if I blinked too long, if I let my guard drop for even a second, I might see that chair no longer empty. And I didn't want to know what would happen if it stood up. I thought the sirens would make me feel safe. They didn't. They started faint, somewhere down the highway, barely breaking through the constant hum of the dispatch room. But as they got closer, their pitch cut sharper, louder, until it felt like the sound was drilling straight into my chest. The lights outside started flashing against the glass. Red, then blue, then red again. And I just sat there, frozen, still staring at the security monitor. Two of me were still sitting there on the screen. One was me, the real me, slouched in my chair, headset around my neck, eyes glued to the grainy footage like I was watching my own funeral in advance. The other was sitting 3 desks over. Upright, stiff, head tilted just enough that I couldn't see his eyes under the glare. He wasn't wearing his headset. He was just watching me. I could feel him, even through the screen. The cameras loop every 30 seconds, so sometimes the two of us would flicker slightly, the image cutting forward in time. But no matter what, the second one never looked away. The door to the dispatch floor slammed open and 2 officers came in. Uniforms. Real. I think. One of them said my name. My throat worked, but my voice didn't. He asked if I was okay. I nodded. It wasn't true. They moved toward me, and that's when the other me stood up on the monitor. His movement was wrong. Not jerky. Not fast. Just deliberate. Like he'd been waiting for them. The officers didn't notice the screens. They didn't notice him. One of them put a hand on my shoulder. "Let's get you out of here," he said. His tone was too casual, like we were just leaving a diner. Like I hadn't been sitting here listening to calls from places that shouldn't exist. That's when I realized the headset I'd left on my desk was still playing something. A voice, faint, bleeding through the tiny speaker. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded familiar. One officer bent to unplug it. The other stepped toward the door. On the monitor, the second me walked across the floor and stopped right where I was sitting. He leaned in close to the camera. My stomach turned over. It was my face. My exact face. Same hair, same lines around the eyes, same tiny scar under my lip from when I fell as a kid. But the expression wasn't mine. He smiled, just barely, like he knew something I didn't. And then the feed cut. Every camera went black. The officers tensed. One of them swore under his breath. Then the lights went out. Not just the dispatch floor. The whole building. For a second, I thought maybe the power outage was just a coincidence. But the emergency lights didn't come on. The generators didn't hum. It was just black. Pitch black. I could hear the officers moving. Heavy boots. Breathing. Someone's radio crackled, but the voice on the other end was just static. Then footsteps. Not theirs. Closer. One of the officers swung a flashlight beam through the dark, and it landed on a figure at the far end of the room. It was me, standing there, hand at my sides. The officer's voice was tight. "Hey, stop right there." But the other me didn't stop. I felt something shift inside me, like air pressure before a storm, like my chest was being pulled toward him. My legs twitched, like they wanted to stand and walk forward, too. The officer closest to me stepped between us. I could hear the Velcro rip as he unclipped something from his belt. The second me stopped just out of the flashlight's reach. And in the dark, I heard him say something. Quiet, barely a whisper. But I heard it. "You're in my seat." My heart was slamming so hard it hurt. The officer lunged forward, and everything went wrong. The beam of the flashlight twisted, fractured. For a moment, I saw 2 sets of the same scene, like I was looking through overlapping frames of film. In one, the officer was grabbing the other me. In the other, the officer was grabbing me. The pressure in my head built until I thought my skull might crack. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then the lights snapped back, and I was alone in my chair. The officers were gone. No footsteps. No radios. No breathing. Just me. And me. The other me was standing right next to the desk. His shadow fell across my lap. He leaned down, close enough that I could smell my own skin. He whispered, "One of us leaves." The phone on the desk rang. We both looked at it. It rang again. I reached for it, but so did he. Our hands met over the receiver, and I swear I felt the exact same bones, the exact same warmth, like pressing my palm to a mirror that could feel me back. The ringing stopped. The room shifted. My vision blurred at the edges. For a moment, I thought I saw the dispatch floor full again. All the chairs occupied, all the screens lit, voices overlapping on headsets. But every voice was mine. And then the officers were back, just standing there. One had a hand on my arm. The other had a hand on my shoulder. They didn't look at the other me. They just said, "We have to take you now." I tried to ask which one of us they meant, but my voice wouldn't come out. The second me stepped back, still watching. That tiny smile again. The officers pulled me to my feet. My legs felt wrong, like they didn't belong to me. They walked me toward the door, past the empty desks, past the silent monitors. When we reached the exit, I glanced back. He was still there, sitting in my chair, headset on, like I'd never been there at all. The officers walked me outside. The air felt different, heavier, almost wet. I could see the cruiser parked under the streetlight, engine running. They opened the back door and told me to get in. And I did. The door shut. We started moving. Neither officer spoke. I kept looking at the rearview mirror, waiting to see if he was following. But the parking lot was empty. After a few minutes, I asked where we were going. Neither of them answered. I asked again. This time, the driver said, "Don't worry. We've got you." It didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like fact. We drove for a long time. I don't remember getting out of the car. I don't remember the ride ending. I just remember sitting in a room, not mine, not the station, with a single light overhead. My headset was on the table in front of me, and from somewhere, far away, I could hear a voice. It sounded like me. It was asking for help. When the report finally came out, they said the police arrived and removed me from the building. But they refused to say which one of me they took away. Some nights, I'm not sure either, because I'm still here. And so, is he that I've been a dispatcher for a little over 4 years now. Long enough to hear things I wish I could forget. Long enough to know that silence is sometimes worse than screams. It was a Thursday night in late September. The kind of night where the calls are usually just drunk arguments, minor accidents, and noise complaints. I was halfway through my shift, sipping cold coffee, when the line lit up. I put my headset on, ready to go through the motions. 911, what's your emergency? At first, there was no answer. Just a faint sound of breathing. Not heavy, panicked breathing. Slow, careful, like the caller was trying not to be heard. I was about to repeat myself when a tiny voice finally spoke. There's someone under my bed. It was a boy's voice. Couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. I straightened in my chair. Okay, buddy, what's your name? Noah. All right, Noah. I'm here to help you. Can you tell me where you live? He whispered an address. I typed it into the system, flagging it for an immediate response. He was in a small residential neighborhood just a few miles out. Is your mom or dad home? I asked. There was a pause. My mom's at work. She works nights. Anyone else in the house with you? No, another pause. Just me. And him. Okay. You said there's someone under your bed. How do you know that? Noah's voice got even quieter. Because he's copying my breathing. A shiver went up my arms. I looked over at the clock. The second hand felt too slow. What do you mean, copying your breathing? Noah's whisper trembled now. When I breathe in, he breathes in. When I breathe out, he breathes out. Exactly the same. I try to keep my voice calm. All right, Noah. I need you to stay very still, okay? Don't get off the bed. I've already sent police officers to your house. They're on their way right now. Can you stay on the phone with me? Of course. I'm not going anywhere. For a few seconds, all I heard was his breathing. And something else. A faint, delayed echo of it. Like there were 2 microphones, one picking up the real sound, and another a fraction of a second later. It made my skin crawl. Noah, I said softly. Are you sure you're not hearing your own breathing? He sounded certain. Too certain. It's not mine. It's deeper. That was when I heard it for myself. It wasn't just an echo. The second breath was lower, heavier, like an adult's lungs. It matched him perfectly. Inhale for inhale, exhale for exhale, but the tone was wrong. Okay, I whispered, as if he could see me. Where are you right now? Are you lying down? I'm on my bed, he said. On my stomach. My head's hanging over the side. I can see under a little bit. I froze. Can you see him? Another pause. I can see something. What does it look like? It's like me. I didn't know what to say to that. Like you. It's my face, he whispered. But it's smiling. And it's breathing when I breathe. I felt my throat go dry. My training told me to ask more questions, but my instincts told me not to. I glanced at the location tracker. Officers were still 6 minutes out. 6 minutes felt like a lifetime. Noah, listen to me. Don't talk to it. Don't move. Just keep talking to me until the police get there. It's blinking like me too, he said. A faint static hiss came through the line. His breathing got faster. Noah, stay calm. They're almost there. Then he whispered, so soft I almost missed it. He's trying to get out. I sat forward in my chair. What do you mean? I think he's sliding closer to me. I heard a faint rustle through the phone. not the sound of a child shifting on the bed, something heavier dragging along carpet. I could feel my own pulse in my fingertips. Noah, is there a lock on your bedroom door? Yeah. Okay. On the count of 3, I want you to run and lock the door, all right? 1, 2. I can't. His voice cracked. Why not? Because if I move, he moves. I didn't know what to say. That wasn't in any protocol manual. Noah, I whispered, do you hear the sirens yet? No. Then, in the faintest voice, almost like he didn't want me to hear, he's breathing first now. My skin prickled. What do you mean first? When I breathe in, he breathes in before me. Like I'm copying him now. The line went quiet except for that strange, mirrored rhythm of breath. I checked my screen. Officers, 3 minutes away. Stay with me, Noah. Just keep talking. But he didn't answer right away. There was a scrape, a small thump, and then his whisper came back. His arms coming out. I bit the inside of my cheek. What does it look like? It looks like mine. Every instinct in me wanted to tell him to run. But if this was some intruder, if there really was someone in that room, running could put him in more danger. Another sound came over the line, slow, dragging, like a body pulling itself forward. I could hear Noah breathing faster, but the other breathing didn't speed up. It stayed steady. 2 minutes out. Noah, I need you to get ready to run to your door, okay? When I say now, you. The sound of the phone shifting, rustling sheets, then silence. Noah, he whispered. He's under the blanket with me. I couldn't breathe. Noah, listen to me. Don't open your eyes. The police are almost there. Just keep them closed until you hear them. He was crying now, his words breaking. He's smiling at me. And then, just before I heard the knock of officers at his door in the background, the faintest sound came through my headset. Not Noah. A low voice, too deep to be his, whispering in perfect imitation. It's okay. You mean now? The line cut out. The official report said the officers found him sitting on the bed, alone. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. Nothing under the bed. But when they asked him what happened, Noah just smiled and breathed in perfect sync with the officer questioning him that I didn't even realize at first. It was just a kid breathing into the phone. Quiet, shaky breaths. The kind you hear when someone's trying hard not to cry. I've been a dispatcher long enough to know that silence can mean a lot of things. Sometimes panic, sometimes shock, sometimes just fear that if you speak, something will hear you. But this was different. When I first answered, I thought maybe the line was bad. There was static, that faint buzzing you get when you're between cell towers. And under it, the sound of breathing. Small, slow, careful. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my voice low. You learn how to shout on calls like this. It can spook people into hanging up. The kid didn't answer. Not right away. There was just this long pause, like he was debating with himself whether it was safe to say anything at all. Then, in the smallest whisper I've ever heard, he said, "He's copying me." It was so soft, I almost didn't catch it. "Who's copying you?" I asked, leaning closer to my headset. "My breathing," he said. "He's under my bed." My fingers froze over the keyboard. There are moments where your brain throws a dozen possible explanations at you at once. All the reasonable ones first. Sleep paralysis. A nightmare. Another kid in the room playing a trick. But the tone in his voice, it wasn't a kid telling a joke. It was a kid trying not to move a muscle because he thinks moving might get him hurt. "Okay, listen," I told him gently. "Where's your mom or dad right now?" "They're sleeping," he whispered. "Don't wake them up. Please." My stomach sank. "Why not?" "Because he'll stop," the boy said. "He always stops when they're awake." I don't know why, but that made the back of my neck prickle. I started pulling up his location while I kept talking, asking little questions to keep him focused. Name, address, age. He said his name was Tyler. He was 8. The address popped up, a residential street. One of those older neighborhoods with narrow sidewalks and peeling paint on the fences. 2 officers were already patrolling nearby. I typed the dispatch code and sent it through. And then, without warning, I heard it. The second set of breathing. I had my volume up high, and I swear to God, I felt it before I understood it. This strange doubling in the sound, 2 tiny streams of air moving in and out. One was Tyler's. The other matched him perfectly. When he inhaled, it inhaled. When he paused to listen, it paused. It wasn't like an echo. It was too clean, too alive. "Tyler," I said slowly, "is there another person in your room right now?" "No," he whispered. "Just him." I tried to steady my voice. "Where exactly is he?" "Under my bed," he said again, laying the same way I am. That hit me harder than it should have. I had this mental picture, a kid lying flat on his stomach, head turned toward the edge of the bed, and right under him, another face pressed to the floorboards, staring up. "What's he doing right now?" I asked. "Breathing," Tyler said. "Like me." And sure enough, I could hear it. Perfectly timed. No lag. No variation. I tried to keep him calm. "Okay, I've sent some police to your house. They're close, all right? Just stay very still. Don't talk unless you have to." There was a tiny shuffle on the other end. "He's still doing it," Tyler murmured. I held my breath for a moment, listening. The sound was so faint, but so exact. Every little tremble in Tyler's inhale had a mirror. Every quiet exhale was answered by one that could have been recorded and played back at the same moment. Except it wasn't recorded. And I realized something else. If this was a person under the bed, they were listening to Tyler breathe, adjusting themselves instantly to match. That's not easy to do. It takes attention. It takes focus. It felt intentional. The officers radioed in that they were on the street. I told Tyler, "They're almost there. Just stay put, okay?" He didn't answer. "Tyler." The breathing on the other end quickened just slightly. Both sets, like they'd both started panicking. And then, very softly, Tyler said, "He's smiling." I gripped the mic. "Tyler, you can't see him from where you are, right? How do you know he's smiling?" Silence. Then, "Because my mouth is smiling." I swear my stomach turned over. "Tyler, can you move?" I asked, already typing a note to the officers. Possible impersonation, unknown subject under bed. "I don't want to," he whispered. "If I stop smiling, he'll stop too. And then he'll." The rest of his words were lost in a sudden burst of static, like someone had brushed the phone against fabric. When the sound cleared, the breathing was still there, still doubled, but now it was faster. Almost playful. I kept my voice low. "Tyler, are you still with me?" "Yes," he said, but it didn't sound like the same whisper. It was a little lower, a little slower. And the weirdest part? When he spoke, the second set of breathing stopped. The officers confirmed they were at the door. I told Tyler. He didn't respond right away. Finally, he said, "He's not copying me anymore." That sent a fresh chill through me. The mic on their radios clicked. I heard the officers announce themselves, the thud of a door opening. Footsteps. Then a crash. The line went dead. I didn't find out what happened until later. The officers cleared the room, but Tyler wasn't in bed. His parents were asleep down the hall, unharmed. They found a phone lying on the floor, screen still lit. And under the bed, nothing. No sign anyone had been there. They found Tyler in the hallway closet, curled up and shaking. He wouldn't answer when they asked if he was hurt. When they brought him back to the phone, I could hear his breathing again. Just his. But every now and then, right before he spoke, he would stop, as if he was listening for someone to keep pace with him. That I don't think I've ever hated silence more than I did in that moment. Not because it was empty, but because it wasn't. The boy had gone quiet on the other end of the line, and yet, I could still hear him, or something that sounded like him. Every inhale, every exhale. Smooth, shallow, perfectly measured. It was wrong. Breathing isn't supposed to be that precise. There's always a hitch somewhere, a sigh, a pause, a tiny change in pace. But it was like a loop, like he was playing a recording of himself breathing. I should have said something sooner, but my throat felt stuck. My finger hovered over the mute button, like that would help if something bad was about to happen. I just listened, and out, and then, under it, like a shadow under a shadow, I heard the other one. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear at first. But once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. A second set of breaths, timed exactly with the boy's. If he breathed in, so did it. If he exhaled, so did it. Perfectly matched. I leaned back in my chair, my headset feeling suddenly too heavy. My pulse started tapping against my neck, way out of sync with theirs. I told myself maybe it was just interference. Maybe his phone was picking up his breath and echoing it. But it didn't explain why the second one sounded deeper. I mean low, like chest cavity deep. I pressed the talk button, my voice unsteady. Hey, kid, you still there? No answer, just the breathing. Can you tell me your name again? I tried to sound calm. There was a pause, and then the boy's voice came back, small and shaky. It's still here. My fingers clenched the pen I'd been holding. What's still there? Another pause. The man. I sat forward. What man? Where is he? Silence again, except for those twin breaths, drifting in my ear like waves. And then, halfway through the next inhale, the boy spoke. Only, it wasn't the boy anymore. The voice that came through the line was low. Not just low, wrong. Like it didn't belong on the other end of the phone. Don't tell him, it said. I froze. I swear the room went cold. My hand hovered over the call tray shortcut, but I couldn't press it. My brain couldn't seem to move my body. Hello, I asked, my own voice sounding far away. The boy came back, same small, fragile tone. What? I blinked hard, trying to reset my mind. What did you just say? What? He asked again, confused. I gripped the mic. You just told me not to tell someone. Who were you talking to? He sounded like he was about to cry. That wasn't me. A faint, slow inhale came through. The deeper one. It didn't try to hide this time. I reached for my supervisor's extension, but stopped halfway, because I didn't know what I'd even say. Hey, the child on line 2 is sharing lung capacity with a ghost. Instead, I took a breath and went for calm. Okay, is there anyone else in the house with you? The boy hesitated. Then, no, but he talks like me. That sentence made my stomach drop. I didn't even want to imagine what he meant. He talks like you? Yeah, sometimes he's me. And sometimes he trailed off. I leaned forward. Sometimes what? The line hissed, static crawling in like it was sliding under a door. Sometimes he's not. Something about the way he said it, so casual, like he'd just been living with this, made my skin crawl. I needed more details, needed something concrete. What's your address? Silence. I checked my screen. The line was still live, timer ticking. Hey, that deep voice came back. Don't. It was so close in my ear, I flinched. I swear I felt the warmth of it, like someone had leaned in to whisper right against my headset. I ripped it off my head and stared at it like it was something filthy. The room was dead quiet, except for the soft buzz of the monitors. I slipped it back on slowly, my chest tight. The boy was speaking again. You there? I'm here, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. Why doesn't he want me to know where you are? The boy sniffled. Because then you'd come. That's what I'm supposed to do, I told him gently. That's my job. I send help when someone's in trouble. He says help can't come here. I closed my eyes for a second. This wasn't standard. This wasn't anything I'd been trained for. Okay, does this man... I stopped myself. Does this thing look like you? The boy breathed in slowly. I don't know. I never see him. That answer made no sense. Then how do you know he talks like you? A tiny pause. Because sometimes I say things I didn't mean to. I felt an icy trickle slide down my back. Like what? The line crackled again, just faintly. The deep voice returned, but now it was the boy's. Or rather, the boy's voice stretched over something else. Like someone trying on a mask that didn't quite fit. You shouldn't be asking that, it said. Every muscle in my body went tight. My pen slipped from my fingers and clattered on the desk. The voice chuckled, soft, low, and horribly wrong in that childish pitch. See? You don't like it either. My mouth was dry. I knew I should keep him talking for a trace, but every instinct told me to hang up, rip the headset out, and walk away. I didn't. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It gave me a breathy laugh. Because it's fun. The boy's voice returned instantly, panicked. Don't talk to him. Why not? I asked. Because if you talk to him, he learns you. I almost ended the call right there. But something about the way he said it, like a warning, not just fear, rooted me to the spot. He learns me. The boy's breathing hitched. That's how he got me. My hands were sweating. I glanced at the clock. How long had we been on the line? It felt like minutes, but the call timer said over 7. What happens if he learns me? I asked. The line went quiet for too long. And then both sets of breathing stopped at once. When the sound came back, it wasn't breathing. It was me. My voice. Exact. Perfect. Is this what you wanted? It asked. My entire body locked up. I wasn't speaking. My mouth was shut. But my voice was coming through the headset, clear as day. The boy screamed something in the background, high-pitched, distant. The other voice, my voice, laughed. Then the line went dead. I just sat there, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen. The silence in the room felt different now, like it was waiting. And it's strange how something as small as a sound can haunt you more than an entire night of screaming. It's been a while now, but I can still hear it if I think too hard about that call. The thing is, it wasn't even a sound exactly. Not like footsteps or breathing or some obvious noise your brain can attach to a cause. It was more like the weight of someone's presence sitting in the silence. And no matter what anyone tells you, there's no way to make silence feel heavy unless it's alive. I didn't sleep the night it happened. I didn't even try. My body was wired like it had been pumped full of bad electricity, like every nerve ending was bracing for something I couldn't name. It all started a little after midnight, right after I thought the call was over. I remember looking at the clock on the dispatch screen, 12:42 a.m., and my fingers hovering over the end call button. I'd already said my last words into the headset. I'd already waded through the awkward static, the way I always do when a caller's either walked away or hung up without a goodbye. And nothing. The boy's voice, if it even was a boy, had been gone for a good 30 seconds. Not breathing, not whispering. Just gone. So I did what I've done 1,000 times before. I hit the button. Only, the line didn't end. I thought maybe I'd missed it, or the screen was lagging. Sometimes the software takes a second. But when I checked the connection status, it was still lit green. Still active. No matter what I pressed, it wouldn't drop. I even took off my headset and stared at it for a second, like maybe it was my eyes that were wrong, like maybe I'd misread the screen. But when I put it back on, the sound in my ears confirmed it. Soft, steady, open line silence. I called over to Danny. He was 2 desks down that night, and told him my line was frozen. He wheeled his chair over, looked at my screen, tapped a few keys. Just force close the channel, he said. Happens sometimes. So I did. I forced it shut. The little green light stayed on. That's when he frowned. I could tell it wasn't a joke anymore. He tried from his side, used the supervisor panel, even shut down my terminal for a second. Nothing worked. The call didn't just stay connected. It stayed alive. And that's the part one can't get across to people when I tell it. Yes, a line can technically stay open. Yes, maybe there's a glitch. But it didn't feel like a glitch. It felt like someone was on the other end. We didn't hear anything for a while. Just that dead air hum. Then, around 10 minutes in, I thought I caught the faintest crackle, like someone shifting a phone against fabric. Not a big sound. Not enough to even register if I wasn't listening hard. But when I looked at Danny, he was already looking at me. He'd heard it too. Could be a pocket dial, he whispered. But it didn't sound convincing. Not even to him. We traced the incoming data. No number. Not unknown. Not blocked. Just blank. No origin point. No routing data. Even calls from payphones leave something. This didn't. The hours dragged. I should have gone back to taking other calls. I tried, but my brain kept circling back to that open channel. Because every now and then I thought I heard breathing. Not normal breathing either. It was so soft that it almost disappeared into the static. But there was a rhythm to it. Too steady. Too aware. At 1:18 a.m., I heard something else. My own voice. It wasn't saying anything clear. Just a low murmur, the same way I sound when I'm reading something under my breath. But I knew it was me. I knew. It was the same tone I'd heard earlier that night, when I'd asked the boy if he was safe. I took the headset off like it was burning me. Danny stared at me, waiting for me to explain, but all I could manage was, "That's me. On there." He didn't laugh. He didn't even question it. He just pushed the headset back toward me and said, "Put it on." I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to, but I did. And when I did, the voice stopped. The silence came back. Only now I could feel the listening. By 2 a.m., the rest of the shift knew about it. A couple of the others took turns listening. Nobody could make sense of it. One guy thought he heard a child's laugh, faint, distant, but it cut off the second he said something. Every so often, someone would ask, should we just unplug the whole board? But no one wanted to, because we weren't sure if killing the connection would actually kill it. By 3:12, I'd stopped trying to work. I just sat there with the headset around my neck, the faint hiss of the line whispering against my collarbone. I started to think maybe the boy wasn't the point. Maybe he never was. At 4 a.m., the shift lead told us to just keep the channel isolated until morning. The day tech team would figure it out. So I waited and waited. And at 4:37, I heard my name. Not shouted, not whispered, just said, like someone standing in the same room as me. I froze. Danny mouthed, "What?" I didn't answer, because whoever had said it, it wasn't the boy's voice. It wasn't the deep voice either. It was mine, and it didn't just sound like me. It sounded like the way I hear myself in my own head. You ever hear a recording of yourself and think, that's not what I sound like? This wasn't like that. This was exactly, perfectly me, but I hadn't said it. I yanked the headset off so fast the cord nearly tore from the port. My pulse was hammering so hard I couldn't hear anything else. But Danny had already grabbed it and was listening. His face went still. Then he handed it back without a word. And he wouldn't look at me for the rest of the night. When my relief finally came in at 6 a.m., I told him not to answer that line no matter what. He thought I was joking. He wasn't laughing by 8:15, because that was when he told me the call was still connected. That was 3 days ago. The tech team says there's no active session on record. They swear the logs show my board was offline for maintenance half the night it happened. They can't explain the recording we pulled, the one with my voice saying my own name. Mostly because when we tried to play it again, the file was empty. And here's the part that keeps me up. That night, when I went home, my cell phone was already on the kitchen counter. I know I'd left it charging in the bedroom before work. And a lock screen showed I'd been on a call for 7 hours. No number, just the word active. I don't even know how to explain this without sounding like I'm losing my mind. Maybe that's already happening. Maybe I'm just replaying the same moments in my head so many times that they feel different. But start on a Tuesday. Not that the day matters. Except it does. Because that's the last day I can point to and say, yes, that's when it was still normal. It was 2:52 a.m. My shift had been quiet, just the usual static, the occasional drunk and disorderly call from downtown, a few car alarms no one cared about. The kind of night you hope for as a dispatcher. I was halfway through my coffee, burnt and bitter from sitting on the hot plate too long, when the phone rang. The tone wasn't different, but something about it made me sit straighter. Maybe it was the silence right before it rang, the way the static seemed to pull back like holding its breath. 911, what's your emergency? I said, my voice falling into that automatic calm they drill into you. For a second, I thought no one was there. Then a man's voice came through. Breathless. Urgent. There's a fire, he said. My house, my wife's inside. Okay, sir, stay on the line. I told him, already typing the location into the system. What's your address? He gave it. 114 County Road. Rural area, no hydrants nearby. I asked him if anyone else was inside. He said no, just his wife. I told him to get outside, stay safe. He kept saying, she's still in there, like he didn't hear me. Through the line, I could hear the crackling of flames. It wasn't background noise. It was in my ear, loud enough that I could almost feel the heat. Then, a sharp sound like with splitting. The man gasped. The stairs. The line cut. I dispatched fire and EMS. Logged the call. 15 minutes later, one of the firefighters radioed in. They had found the house fully engulfed. The wife hadn't made it out. The caller, her husband, was the one who'd called me. They said he was in shock, sitting in the yard. That should have been the end of it. But at 3:07 a.m., the phone rang again. Same tone, same silence before. 911, what's your emergency? There's a fire. My house, my wife's inside. It was his voice. I froze. Not just because it was him, but because it was the exact same words, in the same rhythm, with the same breath in between. Okay, sir, stay on the line, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. What's your address? 114 County Road. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Sir, is this? She's still in there. She's still in there. The crackling in the background was the same. The wood-splitting sound came at the exact same moment as before. Then, the stairs. And the line went dead. I stared at the receiver like maybe it could explain itself. I checked the call log. The first call was there, time-stamped at 2:52. The second one was logged at 3:07. both from the same number. But the husband was still sitting with the paramedics outside his burned home. I didn't tell anyone at first. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I just talked to a guy who's standing in front of you. I try to rationalize it. Maybe the system had glitched and replayed a recording. But the thing is, we don't store audio like that. Not instantly. And even if we did, the system doesn't call us. The shift dragged on, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then at 3:22, the phone rang again. Same tone, same pause. There's a fire. My house, my wife's inside. I didn't even say hello this time. I just listened. It was the same. Every breath, every word. The background crackling, the stairs breaking, the cutoff. I checked the clock. 3:22 a.m. 15 minutes exactly. I don't remember making the decision, but I stopped logging them. I just let them happen. 3:37, 3:52, 4:07. Every time, the same words, the same fire, the same moment before the call ended. Somewhere around the fifth one, my coworker Marla leaned over and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I didn't tell her that every time I heard the man's voice, it felt less like I was answering a call and more like I was inside it. Like the flames were closer. By 5 a.m., I stopped answering. The calls still came every 15 minutes like clockwork. I just sit there and watch the light blink, knowing exactly what he was saying. When my shift ended at 6 o'clock, I handed over to the morning dispatcher, Paul. I didn't mention the calls. That afternoon, when I woke up, I convinced myself it was just exhaustion. Sleep deprivation can make things repeat in your head. I've had calls stick with me before, screams, crashes, even songs someone was playing when they died. But when I came back for my next shift, the blinking light was already there. Paul said something weird. He said there was a ghost call on the board that wouldn't clear from the system. Same number, same timestamp, showing up every 15 minutes. He thought it was a technical issue. But when I sat down and answered it, there's a fire. My house, my wife's inside. It hadn't stopped that I've worked dispatch for years, and I thought I'd seen every kind of weird call a night shift could throw at me. But what happened last night? I don't even know if weird is the word for it anymore. When the second call came in, I thought it was just bad coincidence. But when it happened the third time, I knew something was wrong. It started at 2:42 a.m. My headset crackled, and a voice came through, panicked, choked up. A man yelling about a fire. I remember every word because he repeated himself like a broken record. There's fire in the hall. It's coming under the door. My wife, she's in the bedroom. I can't. The rest dissolved into coughing. His voice was ragged, frantic. I heard pounding, maybe his fist on the wall, and then a shattering crash. I did what I always do. Stayed calm. Took the address. Sent the nearest units. Told him help was on the way. The whole time, I could hear the heat in his voice. I don't mean literal heat, not just the fire. I mean the kind of terror that seeps into a person's throat, where even the words feel like they're burning. Fire crews left the station at 2:44 a.m. They were at the address by 2:50. By the time they got there, the building was empty. No smoke, no flames. They double-checked the address, circled the block, even walked the hallways. Nothing. I thought maybe the guy ran, or maybe he was high and imagined it. It happens. But 15 minutes later, the line lit up again. Same number, 2:57 a.m. There's fire in the hall. It's coming under the door. My wife, she's in the bedroom. I can't. Same coughing. Same crash. For a second, I thought maybe the call had somehow been replayed, like the system was glitching and looping audio from the first one. But no. I asked his name this time. Mark, he gasped. Mark Whitley. Please, you have to. I sent the address again. Same building. Same apartment number. The crew was still nearby, so they were there in under 2 minutes. Nothing. No fire. No smoke. One of the firefighters radioed back, asking if I was screwing with them. I wasn't. By now, my stomach was twisting. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I'd written the address wrong, or maybe I'd misheard the first time, and this was just a freak coincidence. So when the third call came, I was ready. 3:12 a.m. There's fire in the hall. It's coming under the door. My wife, she's in the bedroom. I can't. Same voice. Same rhythm. Same desperate breaths between words. I interrupted him. Mark, listen to me. You've called before. Twice. There's no fire. You're safe. He didn't respond. Not to that. He just kept going like I hadn't said a thing. Like he couldn't even hear me. My wife, she's in the bedroom. I told him to open the window. To get out. I told him the crews were already there. He didn't acknowledge anything I said. It was like I was talking into a recording. We sent the crew again. They checked the place top to bottom. Again. Nothing. When they came back on the radio, I could hear the tension in their voices too. They weren't laughing anymore. Around 3:20, the call logs showed something strange. The 3 calls from Mark? They were identical. Not just the same words, same length, same pauses, same background noises, same little gasps for breath. Identical down to the second. That's when I thought, okay, maybe it's a prank. Some pre-recorded thing a kid is playing to mess with dispatch. But if it was, then how did the address match a real apartment? And why did the phone number come up as a local landline? I looked it up. The name Mark Whitley was tied to that exact address. The database showed no one else living there. 3:27 a.m. The call came again. Same words, same panic, same everything. This time, I didn't even bother sending the crews right away. I just listened, and then something shifted. It was subtle, but I swear the background noise was quieter, like the fire had already burned itself down. I tried asking him questions again, just to break the pattern. Mark, what day is it? Mark, can you tell me if the door is locked? Nothing. He kept going through the same script, like a man trapped in his own nightmare. When the crews checked again, they knocked on his door. No one answered. They forced it open. Empty. Not just empty. It looked like no one had lived there for months. The bedroom had no bed, no furniture, just bare walls and dust. At 3:42 a.m., the call came again. I didn't want to answer it. I know that's not an option in this job, but I didn't want to hear his voice again. And when I did answer, it was worse. Because I realized it wasn't just that he was repeating himself. It was that I was repeating myself too. I said the exact same things I'd said the first time. Same tone, same words, without even meaning to. Somewhere in the middle of that fourth call, I felt like my brain skipped, like I lost a second, or maybe a minute. And when I came back, I was already midway through the conversation, but I had no memory of starting it. It was like I'd been dropped into the middle of my own voice. When the call ended, I checked the time. 3:57 a.m. 15 minutes after the last one. I told my supervisor. He didn't believe me. Not really. But he sat with me for the next one. 4:12 a.m. And when it came in, I saw his eyes widen as soon as he heard the first line. There's fire in the hall. It's coming under the door. My wife, she's in the bedroom. He mouthed the words along with the caller. And then, 15 minutes later, we both mouthed them again. By 5 a.m., the room felt wrong, like the air itself was thicker. Every clock on the wall seemed louder, every second dragging. I remember thinking, if this is still happening when the sun comes up, I'm walking out. But the sun didn't come up. It was 5:12 when the next call came in. And when I hung up, it was still 5:12. Not 5:13. Not even 5:12 and 30 seconds. Just 5:12. The clock on my monitor. The wall clock. The one on my phone. All the same. That was when I realized maybe it wasn't the calls repeating. Maybe it was everything. I don't know how many times I've answered him now. It could be a dozen. Could be 100. Sometimes I feel like I've been here for days. Other times, it's like the last call was just seconds ago. But every time it's 5:12. Every time the fire is in the hall. Every time Mark's wife is in the bedroom. I've tried breaking the pattern. Once, I didn't answer at all. Just let it ring. But when I looked up, the crew was already back at the door, asking why I didn't send them. Like they had come from a call I never made. Another time, I answered and just screamed into the headset, hoping to shock him into stopping. He didn't react. He just kept talking. I can't leave my chair anymore. The first time I tried, I was halfway to the break room when the phone rang. I blinked, and I was back at my desk. Headset on, mid-sentence, like I never stood up at all. I think the others are stuck too. I hear them talking, the same conversations over and over. One guy keeps asking if anyone wants coffee. The same words, same tone, same fake little laugh at the end. Every time I turn my head to look at him, he's already halfway through saying it again. I don't know what's outside the building anymore. I tried looking out the window once. It was dark, but not like night. It was flat, like the darkness you get when you close your eyes too hard and see the red in your eyelids. No streetlights, no cars, no stars, just black. Mark's calling again. I can hear the first words in my head before they even come through the line. There's fire in the hall. It's coming under the door. I don't know if I'm still helping him. I don't know if he's even real. Maybe I'm the one who's stuck in the hall. Maybe I'm the one who's burning. I think I've said this before. I don't remember when I first noticed the clock. Maybe that's because time had already stopped. I had been staring at the dispatch board for what felt like hours. Or maybe it was minutes. Or maybe it was just one long, unbroken second that refused to let go. The phone kept ringing in those sharp bursts, and I kept answering, same way I always do, but my body felt like it was on autopilot, like I was just catching up to something that had already happened. It was when I reached for my coffee, lukewarm, bitter, that my eyes drifted to the wall clock above my monitor. The big black hands were frozen. The second hand didn't twitch. The red tip just hovered there like it was holding its breath. 3:07 a.m. That was weird enough. But when I checked the one by the break room door, it was 3:07 a.m. too. So it was the one above the call logs counter. And the tiny digital one on my desk phone. 3:07. Everywhere. The building was so quiet. I could hear the faint whine of the fluorescent lights. I rubbed my face and shook my head, trying to convince myself that I was just overtired, that maybe I had read the same time twice without realizing it. But that excuse fell apart when I checked the clock on my phone. 3:07 a.m. Battery at 84%, no service. I blinked, shut the screen off, turned it back on. Still the same. Then the phone on my desk rang. I didn't even flinch anymore. That was the worst part. My hand just moved, my mouth opened, my voice came out like muscle memory. 911, what's your emergency? Static for a second, then a woman's voice. There's someone outside my window. They've been there for hours. Her words had that desperate crackle of someone who'd been holding their fear in too long. What's your address, ma'am? 1127 Ash Creek, she said quickly. They're not moving. I can't see their face. I don't think they're breathing. Her voice trembled on that last part. I pulled up the location, but before I could respond, something in my brain twitched. I knew this address. I had to send a unit there. Not an hour ago. Not even 30 minutes ago. Exactly 15 minutes ago. I swallowed hard. Ma'am, I just sent. And then the line cut. Dead air. I stared at the receiver like maybe I had imagined the whole thing. But my fingers were already typing in the call log. And there it was. 3:07 a.m. Caller. Female. Complaint. Suspicious person outside window. Address. 1127 Ash Creek. And right above it, another entry. Same address. Same caller. Same words. Same time. 3:07 a.m. I felt my pulse climbing, but the room stayed unnervingly still. I stood up and looked out across the dispatch floor. 3 other operators sat at their desks. All of them were frozen in that strange rhythm, answering, speaking, typing, hanging up, like a loop on repeat. Every single monitor screen showed 3:07 a.m. I stepped toward Mark's desk. He was mid-call, pen hovering just above the notepad like he was going to write something down, but couldn't decide if he'd already written it. I listened. Can you tell me if they're still there? Ma'am, hello? The static on his headset was the same sharp hiss I had just heard. I looked at his call log. Same thing. 3:07. 3:07. 3:07. Every single entry. I backed away, heart pounding. This wasn't just a glitch. This was something else. Something deeper, like we were all stuck. I went to the break room, desperate to hear something different. My own footsteps sounded muffled against the tile, like the air was too thick. I poured water into a cup and took a sip. It was flat, warm, like it had been sitting out for hours. On the table sat a magazine. I flipped it open, half hoping to see something that made sense. The page was an ad for some car insurance company. The model in the picture was smiling, hand on the steering wheel. But her eyes weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at me. I dropped the magazine. The wall clock above the fridge read 3:07 a.m. The phone rang again. I didn't want to answer it. Every instinct in me screamed not to. But my body moved anyway, like someone else was inside my skin. 911. What's your emergency? This time it was a man. Calm voice, low tone. There's someone in my house, he said. I already knew what was coming. They're standing at the foot of my bed. What's your address? My voice was barely a whisper. He gave it. It wasn't Ash Creek this time, but I recognized it. I had taken that call before, too. The same voice, same flat delivery. 15 minutes ago. Exactly 15 minutes ago. I wanted to hang up, to break the cycle, but my hand didn't move. I just sat there listening as he repeated every word exactly like last time. Even the pauses were identical. And when he was done, click. I checked the log. 3:07 a.m. By now my breathing was shallow, quick. I tried my phone again. The home screen froze when I touched it. Nothing moved, not even the blinking cursor in my notes app. It was like the whole world had been pressed between two sheets of glass. But the calls never stopped. One after another. Always the same voices, the same words, same addresses. Like the universe had only given us 15 minutes of reality to work with, and it was playing it back over and over. The strangest part? I couldn't remember what came before it. I tried to think of yesterday, of what I had eaten for dinner, of the drive to work. Nothing. Just fragments, blurry and soft, like dreams that dissolve when you try to hold them. And somewhere in that haze, I started wondering, what if I was never supposed to notice the clock? What if everyone else here doesn't notice because they can't? I looked at Mark again. Same posture, same pen above the paper. I swear I had seen that exact angle of his arm, that exact way the cord on his headset curled, 100 times already. Maybe more. The only thing that ever changed was me. My memory. And that's when the idea hit me. If time was frozen, if this moment was looping, maybe I could move outside of it. Maybe I could step off the track. So I stood up, walked to the main door. My hand closed around a push bar. It wouldn't budge. Not like it was locked. Not like something was holding it closed. It was like the door was part of a photograph, and my hand was just pressing against ink and paper. I backed away slowly. The ringing phone cut through my thoughts again. I turned toward it. My desk. My headset. Waiting. And for the first time since this started, I didn't move. The ringing didn't stop. It just kept going. A sharp, endless sound that drilled into my skull. I covered my ears, but I could still hear it. Not through sound, but through my chest, like it was vibrating my ribs. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been seconds. It could have been years. My hands were shaking when I finally grabbed the receiver. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end wasn't a stranger this time. It was me. Finally, my voice said, "You're listening." The first time it happened, I told myself I imagined it. You have to understand, after the clocks froze at 3:07, after the calls kept looping, my brain was already wound tight. Every sound was heavier, every shadow longer than it should have been. My mind kept slipping between work mode and something else, survival mode, I guess. But the call was different. It started the same, just like it always did. Static. A man's voice shouting for help. Something about fire. About people screaming. The background was always the same. That weird, distant roar like a stadium crowd muffled through walls, but not happy, not cheering. But this time, the scream in the background wasn't a stranger's. It was my own. It wasn't loud. Just a sharp cry. The kind I've made before without thinking. When you drop a boiling mug, or slice your hand on paper, or step on something sharp. That involuntary gasp of pain. I froze in my chair. I knew that sound. I knew the exact pitch of it. And it didn't belong in the script. The man kept talking. I tried to keep him on the line, my training autopilot kicking in, but my chest was tight. I was replaying the noise in my head. It wasn't just close, it was exact. Like someone had recorded me without my knowing and slipped it in. When the call ended, the line went dead like it always did. No trace. No number. No log entry. I looked around the dispatch room. Morgan was at her desk, typing. Arjun had gone to the kitchen. Nobody was looking at me. I almost asked Morgan if she'd heard it, but stopped. If she hadn't, I didn't want to sound insane. And if she had, well, that was worse. The next loop started 12 minutes later. Everything was the same, right up until the man gave the address. Except it wasn't the address anymore. It was mine, my home address. I sat up, so fast my chair rolled back. My throat tightened, but my voice came out steady, old habit. "Sir, can you repeat that?" He did, without hesitation, without stumbling. Just my address, street name and number, clear as anything. The static rose, and I thought I heard my own voice again, further back this time, maybe speaking, but I couldn't make out words. When the line dropped, I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stared at the dead monitor, listening to the blood rush in my ears. I should have told someone. I know that. But when I looked over at Morgan, she was staring at her own screen like nothing was wrong, tapping a pen against her teeth. I realized something. She wasn't getting this call. These changes, they were only coming to me. The third time, the man's voice wavered. He'd always been loud before, panicked but clear. Now he sounded tired, like he'd been running for a long time. And in between his words, I heard someone breathing. Slow, steady, right against the microphone. It wasn't him. It was heavier, off rhythm, almost like the caller and the breather were two different people on the same line. Halfway through, the man stopped and said my name. Not my full name, just the way my mom says it when she wants my attention, sharp, clipped, but not angry. Like someone knew that's how to cut through to me. I went cold all over. I couldn't even get my own name out to answer. The static swallowed him, and the call dropped. By the fourth time, I wasn't pretending this was coincidence anymore. The clock was still stuck at 3:07, but my phone showed 5:42 a.m. My hands felt clammy and stiff. Every repetition was drifting further from the original, like something was editing the recording piece by piece. And whatever was doing it knew me. I tested it. I wrote the call down, word for word, breath for breath, the second it ended. Then when it came through again, I compared. The changes were subtle at first. A single word swapped for another. A sound removed, then added. But all of them were creeping towards something, like someone rewriting a story, leading me somewhere I didn't want to go. In the fifth call, the man described the victim. That was new. He'd never done that before. He said she was slumped against the wall, coughing. Said her eyes were open, but she wasn't moving. Said she looked, and then he said my name. I felt my stomach fold in on itself. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to throw the headset across the room. But I didn't, because deep down, some part of me thought, if I don't hear all of this, if I don't know exactly what's being changed, maybe it'll be worse. Sixth call. The man didn't even bother with the fire story this time. He just said, "You're not what you think you are." I almost laughed, just to break the tension. But the way he said it, not angry, not threatening, just certain, killed the impulse in my throat. I tried asking him questions. Who are you? What do you want? Why me? But the only reply was that steady, slow breathing. The seventh call, I didn't hear it right away, because I was hearing it twice. Once in my headset, and once faintly behind me. I turned so fast my neck popped. The room was empty. Morgan's chair was vacant, her headset hanging. The kitchen light was off, but the second voice was still there, softer, just far enough away that I couldn't tell where it came from. And then, this part is burned into me. They started talking over each other, one line ahead of the other, like the script was out of sync, like they'd both memorized it, but one of them was rushing to get to the end. The eighth time, there was no man, no static, just me, my voice, repeating everything I'd said the first time I took the call, word for word, even the little pauses where I'd been thinking. And under it, barely there, another version of me whispering, "Not yet, not yet." I couldn't breathe. My headset felt like it was burning my skin. I yanked it off and slammed it on the desk. The line was still open. The whisper was still there. I backed away, but it got louder, not in my ears, but in the room. I know how it sounds. I know this is where people start thinking I've lost it. But the air felt wrong, like the pressure dropped, or the walls had moved a fraction of an inch closer. I left my station. I had to. I went to the hall, gripping the edges of the doorway, just to feel something solid. The building was silent. Too silent. Even the hum of the vents was gone. Then my phone rang. Not the dispatch line, my personal phone. The screen was black. No caller ID. But I answered, because I'm an idiot. And it was the call. My call. But instead of the script, starting from the top, it jumped right to the last thing I'd heard before I left my desk. Not yet. Click. By the time I got back into the dispatch room, the headset was back on its hook. I don't remember putting it there. The ninth call never came. But the clock was still stuck at 3:07. I think I figured it out. It's not about the fire. It's not about the caller. It's about me. Someone, or something, is changing the script to make me part of it. And the worst part is, I think I'm almost at my last line that I didn't even know the storage room existed until my second week on the job. It was buried at the end of a hallway I'd never had a reason to walk down. The kind of narrow corridor where the walls feel too close, lit by a buzzing fluorescent tube that can't decide whether to stay on or not. I was just trying to kill a few minutes before my shift started. My trainer, Denise, was still outside smoking, and I didn't feel like making awkward conversation with the night shift guys packing up to go home. The hallway smelled different back there. Not bad, not like mold or rot, but stale, like a book that's been shut for too long. At the end was a door with no sign, just a dented metal knob and peeling beige paint. I don't know why I tried it. Maybe I thought it'd be locked, and I'd feel like I discovered some harmless little secret of the building. It wasn't locked. It opened with a sticky pull, and I was hit with a puff of air that was colder than it should have been. Inside was small, no windows, shelves along the wall stacked with cardboard banker boxes, most labeled in thick black marker. 2009 shift records, call logs 2013, archive 2017. And then there was the one in the corner. It didn't match the others. No label, no date, no dust pattern like the rest. This one looked like it had been tucked away from the world for years. The cardboard was warped and soft, like it had absorbed a little moisture somewhere along the way. I bent down and slid it toward me, feeling grit under my palms. When I opened the top, the smell hit me harder. Not rot, not mildew, just that same stale, shut-up smell, but stronger. Inside were cassette tapes, dozens of them. No cases, no sleeves. Just the tapes themselves, black plastic with little windows showing the brown reels inside. Each had a strip of masking tape on the edge with handwritten numbers. Not dates, just numbers. 01, 02, 03. Some skipped, some repeated. I thought maybe it was training material. Old call recordings. We still use digital logging now, but I know back in the day, everything ran through reel-to-reel and tapes like these. I almost closed the box back up. I almost left it there. But there was something weird about how they looked. I don't know how to explain it. Like someone had touched every single one with dirty hands. Smudges on the plastic. Faint fingerprints that had been there long enough to settle into the texture. I heard Denise calling my name from down the hall, so I grabbed one of the tapes without thinking. Slipped it into my jacket pocket, just to see. That night, after my shift, I dug out the little cassette player I'd had since high school. The one my uncle gave me when I was on a retro music phase. I had to bang the side of it to get the door to open. The tape I picked was labeled 06. When I pressed play, the static came first, loud, messy like the mic was picking up wind. Then a faint click, then a voice. A man's voice. Hello? Hello? Is this? It wasn't someone I recognized. The sound was distant, like he was far from the phone. Another voice came through. A woman this time. Calm, professional. 911. What's your emergency? The man's breathing was ragged. I think she's in the house. There was a pause. Sir, who's in the house? I don't know. I woke up and she's in the hallway. The way he said she made my skin crawl. Not scared, exactly. More like he was trying not to make a sound, like saying the word too loud might let her hear him. The dispatcher's voice, steady, doing her job, asked where he was calling from. He gave an address. I didn't recognize the street, but it sounded local. Then there was a muffled noise in the background. Soft footsteps. Sir, are you in a safe place? I'm in the bedroom. I locked the door. Another pause. Then, she's at the door. Something about the way he said it, flat, almost curious, made my throat tighten. There was a faint tapping in the background. Not knocking, just tapping, like fingernails. The dispatcher told him officers were on their way. Told him to stay on the line. And then I swear I heard it. Another voice, faint, almost blending into the static. A woman's whisper. Open it. The man said no, and then the line went dead. I sat there for a full minute after the tape clicked off, just staring at the player. I work in dispatch. I hear distress. I know what panic sounds like. But this didn't feel like that. It didn't even feel like a real call. It was too quiet, too slow, like everyone in it was aware of something I wasn't. The next night, I couldn't help myself. I went back to the storage room during my break. Denise didn't notice, She was busy arguing with someone on her cell about rent. I took 3 more tapes this time. 02, 08, and one with no number at all. I told myself it was curiosity, that I just wanted to see if they were all like that. They weren't. The first one was just an old accident report. A guy hit a deer. The dispatcher walked him through calling a tow. The second was a domestic dispute. Nothing unusual, just sad. The third didn't even start with a greeting. It was breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Then a sound like fabric moving. Finally, the dispatcher's voice. 911. What's your emergency? But the person on the other end didn't answer. More breathing. Closer now. The dispatcher repeated the question. Then, in the faintest whisper, you're not the one who's supposed to answer. I felt something cold roll down my spine. The dispatcher said, Sir, if you don't tell me your location, I can't. Click. Deadline. I rewound it twice just to make sure I'd heard right. The words didn't change. The voice didn't change. It didn't sound like fear. It sounded like disappointment. By the end of the week, I'd listened to at least a dozen of them. Some were routine, petty theft, drunk driving, noise complaints. But every so often there'd be one that felt wrong. Not because of what was happening, but because of how it sounded. Like the people on the call knew they weren't just talking to a dispatcher. Like they knew I'd be listening years later. Like they were speaking to me. I haven't told anyone about the tapes. Not Denise. Not the other rookies. Not my mom. I keep them in my bottom drawer under a pile of old hoodies. I don't even know why I'm keeping them. Maybe it's because, deep down, I think there's more. That box in storage, there were at least 30 tapes I haven't touched yet. And I can't stop thinking about one simple, stupid question. If these were never logged, never archived, never marked down anywhere, who was on the other end? And what happened to them after the call ended? I didn't plan on listening to more of them. That's the truth. After I found the box last week, I told myself I'd just log it as miscellaneous in the inventory sheet and leave it for someone higher up. But that night, after my shift, I kept thinking about it. The smell of dust on those tapes. The way the labels were blank, except for those strange, faint smudges, like something had once been written there, but rubbed away over time. Curiosity is a stupid thing, especially in this job. So, the next evening, before the phones got busy, I brought the box out from storage and into my little corner desk. I borrowed an old tape player from Evidence. They still use them for interviews sometimes, and loaded one of the cassettes in. The click of the play button sounded way too loud in the quiet. The tape hissed for a moment. Then a voice. A man's voice. Low, panicked. I think she's in my house. I think she's, no wait. A crash in the background. The sound of someone stumbling. Then a woman's voice, distant but sharp, saying something I couldn't make out. And then the line went dead. It wasn't a normal call. It didn't have a usual intro. No. 911. What's your emergency? No timestamp announcement at the start. It felt incomplete, like it had been spliced from the middle of something. I took the tape out and turned it over in my hands. There was no date, no label. Just the cassette itself, yellowed with age, the little screws rusted at the edges. I thought maybe they were just old training tapes. We sometimes use old calls to train dispatchers, especially ones with unusual circumstances, but usually those are clearly marked and they definitely aren't hidden away in some forgotten storage box. I tried another tape. This one started with static, then a faint ringing tone like a phone ringing in the background, but not quite right. It was slower, deeper, and then a voice, this time a woman, sobbing. Please, it's so dark. I can't find the door. Her breathing got louder, closer, like she was leaning into the phone. Something's moving in here. I stopped the tape. It didn't feel like a call. It felt like eavesdropping on something I wasn't supposed to hear. I remember thinking I should check the log records for these calls. Every single one that comes in is automatically recorded and logged into our system with a time, date, and the dispatcher's ID. Even prank calls get documented. So I typed in a few notes from the tapes I'd heard so far. The system came up empty. No matches. Not even close. That was strange, but not impossible. Technology fails sometimes. Maybe they were too old to be in the digital database. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. On the inside of each cassette, right where the clear plastic shows the brown tape, there was a tiny printed time code. Faded, but still readable if you tilted it toward the light. I pulled the first one closer. It read, March 11th, 1987, 1:12 a.m. That didn't make sense. The dispatch center I work in? It was built in 2003. Before that, the property was just an empty lot on the corner of Hartman and West. I know because the older dispatchers always talk about it, how the new building was an upgrade from the cramped one across town. So how the hell was there a call from 1987? I pulled another tape. The time code read August 29th, 1992, 3:44 a.m. Another one, December 5th, 1996, 11:09 p.m. Every single one was from before the center even existed. At first, I thought maybe these calls had been taken at the old building, then transferred here for storage. But that theory died fast, because even the old building, the one before this one, wasn't around in the 80s. Our town didn't have a centralized dispatch until 95. Before that, it was just the sheriff's office answering calls directly. So what was I listening to? I sat there for a long time, just staring at the box. I tried to think about it rationally. Maybe the tapes weren't from our dispatch center at all. Maybe someone mixed them into our storage by mistake. But if that were true, why didn't they have labels? Why were they hidden at the very back of the oldest storage shelf we have? I decided to listen to just one more. I told myself I'd stop after that. The third tape started quietly, just faint breathing for almost a full minute. Then a man whispered, "They're under the floor. I can hear them moving." His voice cracked on the last word. There was a sound like something scratching wood. Slow, deliberate. "They know I'm here." Silence. Then, faint but clear, a second voice whispered directly into the recorder. "We do." I slammed the stop button so hard the player slid across my desk. I sat back, my pulse pounding in my ears. It had to be fake, some kind of prank recording. But even thinking that didn't calm me, because the way that second voice sounded, it wasn't coming through a phone line. It was close, too close, like it was inside the same room as the recorder. I looked up and noticed the others in the room were going about their night as normal, typing reports, answering calls, sipping coffee. No one else seemed to notice that something was wrong. I put the tapes back in the box, shoved the box under my desk, and told myself I'd return it to storage later. But I didn't. For the rest of my shift, it felt like someone was standing behind me. I'd turn around, and there was nothing, just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the glow of the monitors. Still, I caught myself glancing at that box every few minutes, half expecting it to be open or missing or moved. When my shift ended, I didn't take it back to storage. I don't know why. I just didn't want it sitting in the dark by itself. That sounds stupid, I know, but it's like leaving it there would be abandoning something that knew I'd seen it. Instead, I took it home. That was the first mistake. My apartment was quiet when I walked in, too quiet. I live alone, so it's always quiet, but this was different. Like the air was heavier. I put the box on my kitchen table and just stood there, staring at it. I thought about calling someone from work, asking if they knew anything about it. But what would I even say? "Hey, I found some creepy old tapes that don't make sense. Do you know if they're haunted?" No, I'd sound insane. So I did what I always do when I'm trying to make something feel normal. I poured a drink, sat down, and told myself I'd listen to just one more, then put it away. The next tape started with a dial tone, a real one. That endless, hollow hum that makes you feel like you're waiting for something. Then, slowly the tone changed pitch. Lower, warmer, like it was breathing. I was about to stop it when a voice cut in. "You're late." It was a man's voice. Calm, measured, like he'd been expecting me. "I've been calling for you," he said. There was a long pause. I realized I was holding my breath. Then he whispered, "Don't check the date on this one." I froze. My eyes flicked down to the cassette in the player. The time code read, August 9th, 2025, 2:17 a.m. Tomorrow. I stopped the tape so fast it squealed. I didn't sleep that night. When I went back to work the next evening, I tried to focus on the normal stuff. Real calls, real emergencies, people I could actually help. But my mind kept drifting back to that date. At 2:17 a.m., the phone at my station rang. 911. "What's your emergency?" There was breathing on the other end. "You're late," the voice said. My stomach dropped. It was the same man from the tape. Same tone. Same calm. I didn't know what to say. My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" I finally asked. Static. Then, softly, check the floor. The line went dead. I don't know what's going on with those tapes. I don't know where they came from or how they know things they shouldn't. But I do know one thing. The date codes aren't wrong. They're warnings. And I think one of them is meant for me that I wish I could say I slept that night. I didn't. It wasn't just the wrong dates on the tapes. It was the way they sounded. Those voices felt like they weren't just calling from a different time. It was like they were calling from somewhere they shouldn't be at all. By the time morning came, I felt hollow. My head was heavy, like I'd been awake for days. But I still went in for my shift. I couldn't stay away. I thought maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe I'd misread the timestamps. Maybe they were mislabeled. Maybe it was some dumb, clerical screw-up. I kept telling myself that. But that morning, I saw something that killed every excuse I've been building in my head. The box. The same cardboard box I'd found in the storage room the night before. It was sitting right under my desk. It wasn't there when I left. I would have seen it. The top was still closed, but the packing tape looked fresh. Someone had put it there. Someone wanted me to keep listening. I didn't even touch it for the first couple hours. I tried to work, to answer normal calls, but every time I glanced down, my stomach twisted tighter. By lunchtime, my curiosity had already beaten my fear. I pulled the box open. There were more tapes. Not a handful, dozens. All unlabeled except for one detail, the timestamps. And that's when I noticed it. These ones weren't dated years in the past. They were dated in the future. Weeks from now. Months. Even years. I laughed under my breath at first, like it was some weird prank. But the laughter didn't last long. I put the first one in. It was a man's voice. Mid-30s maybe. Panicked. Oh God, there's been a collapse. The bridge. His breathing was heavy, wheezing. Cars, so many cars. I paused the tape. I knew the bridge he was talking about. It was less than 10 minutes from the center. I crossed it almost every day. Nothing had happened to it. Not yet. When I pressed play again, I could hear screaming in the background. Metal twisting. A deep rumbling like something breaking apart. People are in the water. You have to send. His voice cut out. The tape ended there. I felt hot all over, like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. It was too real. Too detailed. If it was staged, it wasn't a joke anymore. It was sick. I tried another. This time, it was a woman. Calm at first, almost confused. Hi. I think there's been a mistake. My husband. Her voice wavered. He went missing 2 nights ago. But you already called me about it yesterday. You told me they found his body in the park. My chest tightened. She kept talking, but her words didn't feel like they were meant for me. Like she was talking to someone else. Someone who wasn't there. Then she whispered something that made my scalp prickle. You said I screamed when I got the news. But I didn't. Not yet. The tape clicked off. The third tape. I almost didn't play it, because the date on the label was my birthday. Not the next one, the one after that. Almost 2 years away. But I did. I wish I hadn't. The second I heard the voice, my stomach dropped. It was mine. Not kind of like me. Not similar tone. It was me. My voice broke. This is dispatch. Oh God, she's still here. There was this horrible static under my words. And in between the crackle, I could hear something else. A sound I still can't describe right. It wasn't breathing. It wasn't footsteps. It was movement, but wrong. She's right in front of me. My voice was shaking. I can't see her face. Then there was this noise, loud, sharp, and I heard myself scream. Not like when you burn your hand. Not like a jump scare. It was the kind of scream you only hear when someone knows they're about to die. And then silence. I sat there for a long time after it ended. The room felt smaller, like the air had been sucked out. I kept telling myself it was fake. It had to be fake. Someone was doing an impression of me. But my brain wouldn't let me believe that. I know my own voice. I know the way I breathe when I'm scared. And that scream, I felt it in my chest, like it had already happened. I shoved the tape back in a box and pushed it under the desk. I couldn't work anymore. I went to the break room just to get away from it. But even there, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. No one else seemed to notice the box. Not my supervisor. Not the guy who worked the desk across from me. They walked right past it like it wasn't even there. That's when I realized no one had ever mentioned the tapes. Not once. I tried to tell myself I'd imagined the whole thing. That I was just overtired. That maybe I've been having some weird stress dream ever since I found that first tape. But the more I tried to push it out of my head, the more I noticed little things. Like when the phones would go dead for a second, or when I'd hear faint voices even when no one was on the line. Sometimes I'd swear I could hear the tapes without even playing them, muffled, like they were calling from inside the box. And sometimes I'd hear my own voice again, just a word or two, whispering from nowhere. The next day, I came in early. The box wasn't under my desk anymore. It was on my chair. There was only one tape in it this time. No label. No date. I told myself I wouldn't listen. I told myself I'd take it straight to my supervisor. But when I picked it up, it was warm, like it had just been recorded. The voice on the tape was me again. But I didn't sound scared this time. I sounded tired. Broken. If you're hearing this, it means you didn't stop. You kept listening. You should have left it alone. My throat felt tight. I kept glancing over my shoulder like someone was behind me. You can't change it. None of it. The bridge, the woman, it all happens the way it's supposed to. There was a pause. Then I said something that made my blood run cold. You're about to get a call. It'll sound normal. You'll think you can handle it. But it's her. The tape cut off right after that. I sat there, shaking, staring at the phone. Nothing happened for maybe 30 seconds. Then it rang, and I froze. I didn't want to answer. I wanted to just walk out. But my hand moved on its own. 911, what's your emergency? There was a pause on the other end. Then, you shouldn't be here. The voice was low, female, no static, no panic, just certainty. You're in my seat. Before I could say anything, the line went dead. I didn't get another call for the rest of the shift. But I kept catching glimpses of movement at the edge of my vision. Reflections that didn't match me. When I finally left that night, I checked the back seat of my car 3 times before driving home. And when I got there was a package on my porch. A small cardboard box. No return address. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. I think I'm done working at the center. But the problem is, I don't think the center's done with me. Because last night, I woke up to the sound of my landline ringing. I don't even have a landline. I picked it up anyway. And it was my voice again. You can't stop it. I didn't want to listen to it. The box was still sitting in the corner of my desk like a tumor, its cardboard skin sagging, its edges darkened with age. I'd gone through maybe half the tapes, and each one left something in me, like splinters I couldn't pull out. But this last one, it felt different before I even touched it. It was sitting at the very bottom, wrapped in a strip of wax paper. No label, not even a smudge of writing on the spine. The plastic case was cloudy, scratched so much it looked like it had been dragged across concrete. And inside, the cassette itself had a single deep crack running across the clear shell, right through the reels, but somehow, it still moved when I tilted it. I told myself not to. Told myself that whatever was on it wasn't meant to be heard. But that's the thing about forbidden things. They don't let you stop thinking about them. By the time I slid it into the player, my hand was shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. The moment it clicked into place, my chest tightened, like my body already knew. I pressed play. Static, not the soft hiss of old air between frequencies. This was deeper, heavy, like the sound was coming from somewhere buried in the ground. I waited, and then I heard me. Not someone who sounded like me. Not a voice that was kind of similar. It was my voice. My breathing. The exact way I start talking when I'm scared. Low, quick, trying to keep control. This is Officer Hall. The recording me said, his voice tight. I don't know where I am. My fingers curled into my palms. The sound in the background wasn't normal room noise. It was dripping. Slow, irregular. Like water falling into something metal. I woke up here, the voice continued. I don't remember getting here. My radio's gone. My flashlight's dead. I think someone's been moving me. I pressed pause. The tiny click of the button sounded like a gunshot in the quiet dispatch room. My mind was scrambling. There was no way this was real. No one had a recording of me like that. I'd never been in that situation. This had to be some sick prank. Maybe an old training tape where someone had mocked me. But the voice, it had the way I breathe when I'm panicking. That sharp inhale on the third word. That tiny break when my throat locks. I press play again. I think it's underground, the other me said. The air's damp. I can't see anything, but there's something else here. The way he said something else made my skin crawl. He didn't mean a person. The tape hissed, the static swelling for a few seconds, and in that wall of noise, I thought I heard movement, slow dragging, something brushing against stone. It's close now, he whispered. I can hear it breathing. It's like the sound cut off into a scream. But it wasn't a scream like I'd heard on any other tape. It was short, sharp, and cut mid-breath like someone had clamped a hand over my mouth. The rest was just wet sounds. Shuffling. Something heavy being dragged. And then, the recording me started crying. Quiet at first, like he was trying to hide it, but it grew louder. He was whispering words, but they were too soft to make out. Then, clear as anything, he said, "If anyone finds this, don't come looking." My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. I stopped the tape, ejected it, stared at it like it had just spoken my death sentence. I should have thrown it away right there, but I rewound it instead. And this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Right before the scream, in the background, there was another voice. Not mine. Low, muffled, almost like it was speaking from the walls. It was saying my name, over and over. By the fifth time it said it, it wasn't muffled anymore. It was right next to the microphone. I slammed the stop button so hard the recorder rocked on the desk. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the wall. My mind kept spinning in loops. If that voice was really me, if that was something I hadn't lived through yet, then it was telling me I was going to die. Somewhere underground, in the dark, with something else breathing nearby. And if that was true, then there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried to shake it off. Told myself it was a coincidence. Told myself someone was messing with me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd heard background sounds like that before. On other calls. On calls that didn't make sense. Calls that came in from places that didn't exist. I stayed late that night. Didn't even notice the other dispatchers leaving. It wasn't until the lights in the hallway flicked off that I realized I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. Somewhere behind me, a chair moved. Just a small scrape. I turned, expecting to see one of the night shift guys walking in. But the room was empty. Empty, except for the tape recorder. It was still sitting there, lid open, the final tape halfway ejected. And the reels were turning. The tape was playing, even though I hadn't pressed anything. I heard my voice again. Louder this time. "Please," the recording me said. "Please don't leave me here." The sound was so close, it didn't even seem like it was coming from the speaker. It felt like it was coming from the room, from right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The recorder clicked. The reels stopped. Silence. And then, right next to my ear, my own voice whispered, "You found me."